10 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, I call the meeting of the Information Technology Committee to order. And our first order of business is to accept the minutes from October 21st, 2025, moved by Sam, second by Dan and Charlie. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Information Technology, we have reports. I'll turn it over for these.
Okay. I think the first report you all have is the projects report. If I recall, is that first in your packet? Yep. So we have a few that are dropping off, that you can see down toward the bottom, we've completed, and others that continue to progress. I don't know if anyone has any particular questions on the report.
Yeah, the facility at 40 in the garage,
Yeah,
is that listed on here somewhere?
it is.
The last,
Number
gray, that's gray, they said.
That's the last gray one.
Yeah, we're working with Matt on that one. We have internet over there now, and so we've started to stand some things up, but we're working with Matt and just waiting to understand what the scope is for our responsibility in that location, other than the tech getting it online.
Yeah,
Nobody should laugh at me when I ask my questions. But you take versus timekeeping installation. Isn't that where you just take something and show it in your computer and upgrades everything?
No,
What is
No.
involved that it takes so long and it isn't like a 2-minute process for an upgrade?
sure. So just to give you an idea, the last time, not long after I started, we did a rework of our timekeeping system.
Yes, I remember that.
Right, and it took over a year and a half to complete that.
But I thought that
This
was all
one-
new equipment.
No, it was not new equipment. It was new software. So this is all about software programming. And so we're moving from our end of life version of our timekeeping software to a new version. So they have to rebuild everything on the back end, which the vendor is taking care of for us. But we have to go through, and all of the different unions all require different pay codes, pay rules. And so it's very complicated to be able to say when somebody punches in, and punches out, to make sure that those can equate properly to follow the rules of the particular union or non-union that they have. Is it first shift, second shift, third shift, overtime, not overtime? Which day does it fall on? Which accrual benefits do they have?
I see
And so-
now. I thought it was just making sure the clock's running right.
Nah, the clocks all work really well, but we're in the process of building out a new system, and we'll be cutting over to that shortly.
And this system is that in like one room where you have to, got a bunch of programs you're running in there, or is this all scattered all over the place?
No, so it's in the cloud. This is
Oh,
one of our cloud
cloud.
systems. Yep, it is now, and the new system is as well.
How do you get to the clouds?
Internet. Yeah, really.
Oh, basically people writing on the computer, changing
Yeah.
programs is what it is.
Yes.
What
So
all this is.
I think the easiest way that I've found to look at what the cloud is it's just servers that somebody else hosts. So we have a cloud here, we have our data center, and we host data here, and that's our local cloud, right? But the cloud in terms of hosting is their server farm that's hosted usually up in one of the big platforms like AWS or Azure, or sometimes their own data centers that are hosted, and the application runs from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so my question goes back to the 40 in barn, I didn't finish the question. So I see it's only 20% complete,
Yep.
so there's 80%, so is it all lactose spectrum, is that part of it done? The reason I'm asking is because I'm getting conflicting stories about the time we're supposed to be able to move in and not move in, and keys versus the fobs. So I'm
Yeah,
trying to get a handle on where we're
Yeah.
getting the wrong information. Okay,
So-
because this, I don't know how long ago this could have been started, this portion of it. But now we're at the end of it, and one thing that I thought would probably go faster than that now seems to be a delay factor.
yeah.
And
So
I
we've
don't-
had
I don't know
internet.
where that ends.
We've had internet for about a month. We got internet about a month ago up there. The wiring has not been terminated, so that's what I'm waiting to hear back from Matt on. Is in Middle Falls, the electricians did all the termination of all the cabling, termination and testing. It's not been completed there or not, and Matt was checking to see if it's part of the scope of the project, or if we're gonna have to try to pull team members to be able to go and do that. Which we did it over in Burgoyne. So we're hoping it's part of the project because it's much better
So when did we realize that was a problem?
when we installed the internet, that it still wasn't terminated at the
And
time,
that was how long ago?
last month.
Last month? So the
Yeah.
30 days, we still have an answer on it.
Roughly. Yep, I know he's looking into that to find out. Once that's done, though, we do have internet up there. We have all the hardware, so we're ready to go, but I think there's some other things that still have to happen that you'd want to check with Matt on.
Okay.
Because I don't know like where the fuel tanks lie up there. I know that there's still things that have to be done for that. And I don't have any idea about the access control, where they're at in terms of running the cabling for that or getting that installed.
Okay, it just keeps, it just keeps circling. It doesn't, I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming that. It just, how long does it take to find out if it's in the scope of service? I think you'd be able to look at the contract and tell if it's there or it's not there.
Right? Yeah, once we know that
That's
for
what's-
sure,
that's
then
what's
if we have
holding-
to,
That's what's holding it up. We have two departments that aren't coordinating. Because he needs to get that to you so you can get this completed.
I don't think that's the only thing holding it up, and we've terminated what we need to get like Wi-Fi up and internet up and all of that, so we're moving forward for sure. Just all the offices and other locations are not done yet. And so the rack will have to be installed along with the patch panel and all of that.
Okay.
And then once we get closer to ready, we'll talk to you and or your IT and work with you guys on a handoff and what you need for that
Okay.
as well.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Gary, on the timekeeping, I'm curious, does it start with an individual, a person, or does it start with a division? Like,
Not sure,
okay,
I
so
understand.
if a person is retiring or whatever, does that drop off the time clock? Or does that position stay on the time clock till you go set up?
Well, so the time clock is for punching in and out. So it's for anybody that's currently employed to punch in and out, and it tracks all the accruals in the system, vacation and all of that. Personnel manages the system. So I'm not sure how to answer your question. It would be for all current employees that use
You
it.
just answered it.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
sure.
And the fact that the eastern part is on the ambulance complete.
Yeah, one in Middle Falls. Yep. Yes, we've had that completed for some time.
Well,
So my question might be more in interacting with also the ticket reports and the projects.
Okay,
So we have two projects that are HR, which is personnel, and the public GAD RMS mobile.
Yep.
But also on the ticket items, we have the sheriff and public safety having 140 hours
right.
for the last month.
Mhm.
I don't know how many tickets that is, whether it's related to the projects, and if the projects get complete, we should expect a lower number of tickets.
Right.
Which would be the same thing for personnel. So personnel has 3/4 of a man month. in
Right.
Ticket items. How many items, and what are they? What's personnel need that much help from you?
Right, so we have another personnel, it's the HR software implementation
Yeah.
that's going on, and that's where the personnel hours are. The tickets don't always relate, or the ticketing hours don't always relate to the projects, because the IT involvement is different. So
Right.
for the CAD RMS, for example, we're helping to manage that project, but there hasn't been a huge IT lift in doing it. Most of that time is spent by public safety department and the sheriff's office, who are working with the vendor to build out the software. So there is some, but not a huge lift from IT in that regard.
So the tickets for public safety and sheriff are unrelated. Yeah, Amazon.
Most likely, I can't tell you for sure. They're all unrelated. There might be a few,
So if
but
they
it's
have
not a big lift.
If they have 140 hours, the ticket reports. Does it make sense to elevate their education level so they can do more themselves, or are they always gonna be dependent on IT? Because, IT is immersed in everything we do.
Right,
And
yes,
are
it
we
is.
educating our departments to a high enough level that they are more self-sufficient before they have a review?
Yeah, so we always try to. We work with people to learn as much as they want and they're able to learn. Obviously, we can't give them administrative rights to the computer to be able to
Sure.
do those type of functions, but my experience has been that some people want to know more than others. Some don't have any interest in learning and they want you to do everything, including changing a battery in the mouse, because they're not comfortable with technology at all. And then others are very good at being tech savvy, and going through and working through a process and want us to show them, and we're happy to do that. You know, I think our entire department is very good at being able to share our information. None of us are like, no, that's my job, don't do that, you know, at all. We definitely are very open to people wanting to learn and empowering people to be able to be self-sufficient as much as possible.
It sounds like it might be the board's request, not to you, but to the departments to have them elevate their skill set and technology as we get more technology, so they're not calling you to change mouse patterns.
Right, and I use that just hypothetically as an example. It has happened, doesn't happen often though, so I don't want you to think that it does. But yeah, I think basic technology skills are important. And I do think it's something that in this day and age, some people are better at than others. And be great.
If,
So I've been in the software world. Sometimes you don't want people playing with your computers. They do more damage than they are, so there has to be limits on what we do. I mean,
Yeah.
you can cause some really bad repercussions. If someone thinks they know what they're doing, they're not. It may save a lot of time by having someone do it, even for the simple thing.
Well, if it depends on the request, I would imagine. If it's
I understand, but
if it's user understanding of existing software and we're calling IT, that's a different use of IT than if it's administrator rights. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Are we calling IT too much for user software?
If you ever would like to take a look at the type of tickets we have, I'd be happy to have you stop down and show you, like, we could take a subset of tickets and take a look at what type of tickets are out there.
Do they get categorized themselves as well? Because we only see tickets by department, by
Right.
hours.
Yep.
It would be interesting to see tickets by category of service of the
I could
ticket.
take a look. We don't typically track them that way or in that fashion right now. We used to in the past, and there's always something that doesn't fit into a category. And then it ends up being, sometimes people will call and say, oh, my modem's broken. Well, it's not really your modem, but the category that was chosen had to do with that when it really didn't have anything to do with a modem, since there really aren't modems in computers anymore these days. And it was something completely unrelated. So it's difficult to categorize, but we can certainly look at that. Happy to see if we can provide some more detail on them for you.
Depending on whether it's asked for or desired, so.
Yeah, I would say the bulk of the calls we get, like almost all of them, are things that where people can't work. You know, the
Okay.
computer won't boot, or their password's locked out, like have to reset passwords, or, you know, maybe Office isn't launching properly. You know, we always ask people to please try to reboot your computer first. You know, because that fixes so many problems, right? But if a reboot doesn't fix, I don't ever want people to feel like they can't call us or shouldn't call us. You know, I'd rather have them call and ask a question, because there's no such thing as a stupid question, in my opinion. And then let us help them, because it will save them time and get them back to work more quickly.
Thanks.
if you have a software upgrade, do you, as an IT department, go and do it to every computer? You know, do the software upgrade?
It depends on what type of software.
Okay.
So like Windows, for example, Windows 10 was end of life.
Yeah.
I'd actually mention that to anybody in here. If you have Windows 10 still in your environment, make sure you get them upgraded to Windows 11. But that's
You
something
do
we
that.
do. We
Okay,
do on the backside, but we don't have to physically go to the computers to do them. We have remote systems that will allow us to do the upgrades.
even their laptops?
Yeah.
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 That's very interesting.
Yeah, so we've been done with that upgrade for some time.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the nice things about the world has changed, right? Back in the day, you didn't buy software, you'd install it on the computer, and then you'd own that software outright until it was end of life, 5, 6, 7 years. They don't do that anymore. It's all subscription based now. You know, everybody has to make their money for their software, including Microsoft. And so because it is cloud-based now and subscription-based, you don't have to have a lot of software installed on the computers any longer. They go to a website and then that software is managed in the cloud. So that you don't have to touch every computer to upgrade anymore as well.
Great.
You lost me about 20 minutes ago.
I'm gonna ask this. Good, right there.
Yeah.
Well, now, I'm wondering what my phone is.
Dan, your head's in the clouds.
Yeah.
May I ask
So-
you a quick question? Okay, yesterday I got an email that said that building C, the entrance was being worked on and locked.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, I was the building C entrance fee. So I opened up and read further, and then 5 minutes later got a ticket.
Oh, because you replied all and the ticketing system was on it, because I remember seeing the reply. Yeah,
Oh.
So is the building C entrance locked or unlocked?
yeah. I'm not sure.
So I replied all, I replied all,
I'm
okay,
creating
yeah,
a
find
system
out what
like
was going on.
that.
Yes.
West.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah,
thank you, Terry.
That'll teach you.
Yeah, well, I went in and looked, and I'm like, everything looks okay. But
Yeah.
then when I got the ticket, I wasn't sure what.
Yeah, we allow ticket creation just by sending an email in to our IT email address. That creates a ticket automatically and gives you a reply back, so you know that it was received. Yeah.
Individuals.
So I think, we moved over to the ticket report. Any other discussion on the ticket report?
Work on 5G.
All right, and when we go to cybersecurity report.
Okay. Cybersecurity report, shows you the statistics for the month, and then the, items of note that our cybersecurity officer had listed was, just a reminder, October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and just to, reiterate that it doesn't end with the ending of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and just to remind everybody to remain diligent. I did want to bring up the Windows 10 so that you all can check your computers you have at your towns and make sure you don't have any Windows 10 left in your environment, because that was end of life in October as well. And then Ryan, our cybersecurity officer, also participated in, it was a hackathon they had over at SUNY Adirondack, which we've been trying to get more involved with the community, including SUNY Adirondack, in terms of mentoring students and being part of the curriculum and training for people as they're coming through as well.
What is the hackathon?
That was a great name.
It's a great name. My understanding, it didn't really sound a lot like hacking, which we thought it was gonna be, but they built applications to solve a community problem. And they locked them in for 24 hours. So it was interesting. Yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, when I read the name, I thought they were trying to hack something.
Yeah,
You see how well they did.
right, exactly.
It was worth a
I
chuckle
think that's
last
where
night.
it came from, because in the old days, private groups would get together and try to launch hacks to get into systems. Now it's a general catch term for let's solve a problem that happens in campuses and schools, or even private companies. They get a hackathon to build this app for us, and they just get together and they brainstorm and turn out front.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay,
I have a couple of other things.
yep,
Is that okay?
application cybersecurity.
Yep, one of them, before I do that one, since we were just talking about SUNY Adirondack, I do have a request that I'd like to make. We have a subset of very old switches. We tried to auction them, and for 23 switches, we got $109, I think it was, on the auction. And so like I said, we work with the IT program over at SUNY Adirondack. And the gentleman who teaches there uses Cisco switches because they have the Cisco donation program. And I was hoping that I could donate 8 of those 23 switches to him, since we've already tried the auction, and then try to re-auction the 15 that are left afterwards. But I would ask approval to be able to do that.
First of all, Dan, is that okay if we've auctioned and got a price and now we decide we're going to give them to another organization?
It's not all of them either, it's just a subset.
Was it a bid that was accepted, I guess, for that person?
We did not accept it. Shipping would have cost more than that.
I'll have to look into it. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Something like declaring, I know, like with DPW, we declare vehicles surplus and then send them on their merry way. And then it's in the process, I'll probably have to talk to Barb and look into it further, but I don't feel comfortable answering that question.
Did we declare them surplus?
remember declaring them surplus.
Yeah,
It's part of the assets. I don't know that you have to declare assets surplus, like we auction computers and those kind of things all the time. So I think the switch.
it has something to do with the tag, if there's a tag on them, isn't
Does have an asset tag.
it? Yeah, so
Computers do too. Yeah,
I don't know.
I think they should
They should be.
probably go
Okay.
through the
I
process
think they gotta
and
be
declare
declared
surplus.
surplus.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
we can do with them as fit.
Okay,
And we can reject it.
Right.
yeah, I know we did already auction them, so I'm assuming they went through that process already. Since we had them up on auction, but
We'll make it official. I make a motion, we make those surplus.
Second, all right, any discussion? Yeah,
I'd like to amend that motion to declare them surplus and donate to ACT.
I'll second the amendment.
okay. So any discussion on the amendment?
Why can't we just give them all to them?
Yeah, that's gonna be my question.
yeah, I don't think he wants them all. He listed out 8. He said, I'll take
That's
8
his
of them.
punishment for taking.
I know, right? Yeah, I just thought it would help the kids a lot and gives them some
Sure.
opportunity.
All those in favor of the amendment?
I,
Passes. Now to the motion.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes.
Question on how big are these switches?
About this big,
That each one,
each one.
be interested to see how that gets reflected in the minutes.
Yeah,
Big picture.
yeah. That's a good point.
well, and so if we declare them surplus and put them on auctions international, can you do stipulations with that? And then the pickup only is what I put in there. 'Cause
Yeah,
if they bring
You can bet you can
$75,
whatever
we
term
gotta
you want.
ship them. Huh?
Is that what the term she wants?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we pay for shipping typically, the people would pay for the shipping or
Okay.
pick them up.
Charlie,
We
And
don't want to.
I've had a little experience disposing of obsolete IT. And the best place, and if the sizes of what you have would fit, is Staples.
Yeah,
They take, if we can't get someone to take it, they pretty much take anything that is under a certain size.
oh, that's good to know. Okay. Right, yeah, because most of the things, once we're done with them, I mean, we use them until there is no support left or third-party support.
I'll take humidifiers to them.
Yeah, they.
Wow.
But it gets interesting with tech, both with disks and switches and with routers. They do it.
That's great.
okay. Okay,
And then the next item was the cybersecurity grant. It's time to apply for that again, and so we'd like to have permission to place that application.
So
second. Yeah, second. Is there a match involved in that? Grant?
It's not a match, no, it's the maximum grant is $50,000, and we did get it last year, and we're hoping we can continue
Sounds like a
to
no-brainer.
move it forward this year.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Good.
All I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
Hey, Sarah.
motion to accept the minutes of first, moved by Lance, seconded by Sam and Jim. Any omissions or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now we have 3 reappointments. First reappointment is clerk of the board. Move it. Moved by Sam, second by Lance. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Next was county administrator. Move it.
Second.
Moved by Sam, second by Lance. Any further discussion?
Well, I haven't not on this. They have job evaluations, right, done, every department. How do they factor in? And this is touchy, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm not happy with anybody, I'm totally happy with everybody. But how do you coordinate an evaluation of a department head? There's never a report given right out. So I mean, here,
You've got the
this
supervisor.
is just all through whispers and private discussion. No, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying, how do you publicly say? You know, they're doing a great job. Without citing, they've had a job evaluation and it was excellent, which is what I think. Something ought to be said that they're good before we just blanket approval.
Dan was still here.
That's all I'm
The
asking.
supervisors are all invited to evaluations,
I understand that.
and that's where they should get their information. I don't think we should start opening up in the public about personal evaluations, what happened in personal evaluation.
You don't think that? Is this coming out wrong to where I'm saying it wrong?
No, I don't think you're saying it wrong.
Do a great job and you're in support of reappointing them.
Yeah, that's
There you go.
based on evaluation. I mean, not just because they've got a great voice or a pretty face or whatever. That, and even that is touchy to say that, but I'm just saying, how do you, there ought to be some basis.
So there you go, in your discussion, Dan, you can say I'm reappointing them because I have faith in the work they're doing and they've done a good job in the past and I'd like to see you continue.
I mean, there's something, that's all, I'm happy with anything like that, I'm just saying. That's
First two we moved executive units carried.
We vote on the county administrator,
Yes.
But we did have the motion on
yes, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
it.
Carried. County attorney. Motion to appoint, reappointed, motion by Sam, second by Jim and Lance. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
I do want to say that Dan does have a nice voice. A record show.
I'll hire you to
We did not say pretty face.
All right. Any further discussion for the committee?
Yeah, Dave,
You push, right?
I'd just like to comment on what was being said. And I look at it, and we all have committee meetings in the ten, we all get to see the directors of those various departments operate. We see them numerous times throughout the year. We see them throughout the budget process. I think that we kind of cover that. I know what you're saying, but I think we kind of cover that because we do have exposure to them. It's not like we don't. And
Right.
each one of us will get to the floor to do the actual thing is going to vote on whether we affirm it or we don't affirm it. So we have the opportunity. Because it's personnel charge, it's a little difficult to, as Dave said, be able to discuss things out in the public about employees and who the employee is.
Well, I guess what would have shut me up is if the motion said that, based on their evaluation, their annual evaluation and our interactions, we reappoint. I mean,
I got
it's
you.
something that's making a point that we evaluated them, you know, and that this isn't just what it sounded like.
Right, no, I got it.
Yeah. But anyways,
These do go to the full board.
Yes,
Okay,
and the organizational meeting.
any further business? We're adjourned. Thank you.
wow. Ag Planning, Tourism and Community Development Committee meeting to order for the month of November. First on our business, on our agenda is to accept the minutes from October 21st. Motion made by Lance, seconded by Jay and Sue. Sorry, I almost forgot your name.
You are in the pub today, Dan.
That's the IT. The first on our agenda is the Workforce Development Board 2025 budget. We waited another month, we wouldn't even be in 2025. Does anybody, are they prepared to speak, comment? Who wants to lead this? Would you like to come right up?
Hi, I'm Gretchen Steffen. I'm the Executive Director of the Saratoga, Warren, and Washington Workforce Development Board. I have two folks joining me today, Gary Dake, who is the chair of our board, and then Cassandra Purcell, who is our Deputy Director at the Workforce Board. We brought our budget to you a few months back, and so part of our multi-jurisdictional agreement requires that we have the 3 counties that we serve to get an approval. So our budget, our fiscal year is a little bit different. It's not a calendar year. It goes from July 1st, June 30th. And so we have a board of 30 people that's made up of appointments from Saratoga County, Warren County, and Washington County. So Saratoga, our board approved the budget. And then as part of the multi-jurisdictional agreement, it goes to the counties for their approval. So it goes through their committee processes. And Saratoga County has approved it. Warren County, it was on the agenda to be approved, but was pulled because it wasn't approved here. But it will be going back through the process to be approved in December. It went through the committee process. It was moved to the County Board of Supervisors. The resolution was pulled, and now it is going back to the process for December. So we're here today to answer any questions that you might have, so that hopefully we can get an approval from Washington.
Unless somebody wants to speak before me, I was going to say that I actually forgot what most of the questions were, but I know that we did not approve it because we had questions and concerns. And I checked and I've been informed that most of those have been addressed. And I'm under the understanding this board now is comfortable with moving ahead, and since we're over halfway through. I'm just saying this to get people maybe some dialogue out of someone. Sam.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been discussed in any other depth after we had the meetings. Dennis, so I don't know.
Well, then what's the question that we will get answered?
One of the questions was about the allocation between the counties. Question, how it was allocated between the counties, did that need to be reviewed, and has it been reviewed? I think that was one of the questions.
Yes, there's an allocation process that we go through. So when the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, the funding comes down through the federal government, through the United States Department of Labor, through the New York State Department of Labor, and then the 33 workforce boards. There's a calculation that comes down through the federal, through the US Department of Labor that has the Department of Labor economists and statisticians look at allocations and how they award a dollar amount to each one of the 33 workforce boards. And so it is based on population, but also it is based on unemployment, long-term unemployed, those who can work or are not employed. It has to do with the industries in your area, mass layoffs that occur. It has to do with your poverty levels and the number of households you have in each community and the number of those households in poverty. So those allocations come together, and then we get them as a workforce board. And we had a formula in place internally that was quite old. And so as a result of the request from Washington County, we went back to the New York State Department of Labor and we had them run formulas for us so that if we broke out each one of the counties and we looked at them as an independent workforce board, what would their allocations be? And so they provided us with that information. We just had a board meeting last Wednesday where we presented those formulas to the board. And so there will be some redistribution in our allocations. What was initially thought that some of the other, some organizations would win, some would lose, to put it more delicately. Saratoga ended up with the recommendation that they would get larger percentages. And also the money is broken down into three categories when we do these allocations. We have an allocation for the youth population, both in-school youth and out-of-school youth. There's another allocation that looks at dislocated workers, and those are people that are as a result of a mass layoff. And then the other one is just in the adult category. And so those breakdowns have said that we need to do some reallocation. So the board is looking at that right now. We had our initial discussion. We had the New York State Department of Labor come in last week and did a whole segment on the allocation process and how the formulations work and what we could be doing differently. So the board has to decide at this point, when they might want to, whether they want to make any changes, because they have the ability to make changes. We were looking at getting the direct formulas from the Department of Labor. And so we're still in the midst of discussing how that's going to be rolled out with our 3 career centers. And also when, because we're in the middle of the fiscal year now. And so when we make the decision on the formula reallocations, when do we do that? Do we do it right away? Do we wait till the end of the program year? But that's what the board will decide in the coming months.
Thank you. That's a much better explanation than we had last month.
You got
I think
more, you,
Yeah, I just got one question.
okay,
So if we're already halfway through the year, right, you're halfway through the fiscal year. So why didn't we reduce the request by half a year? I mean, it's, that's gonna goes back retroactive on it as well, if I understand what you're saying.
No, well, the allocations that have been in place for the first 6 months of the year, I think it would be unlikely for the board to go back and reallocate. I'm not sure, but that will ultimately be the board's decision after they discuss and decide.
So I guess what I'm asking is why that decision wasn't made prior to coming back and asking for it. So if it's 100,000, we're just throwing it out there. And you've already used half a year, then you'd only be asking for 50,000 for the whole 100,000.
I see what you're saying, but I'm just not sure. The board has to make the decision whether they want to reallocate retroactively or just
Right,
going.
and I understand, and I guess that's my point. We're making the decision based on we don't know what's gonna be done by the board. So if we were to give the $100,000, and I'm just using, that's a figure that I'm just using, then there's no incentive for them to say, let's go back, because they're gonna allocate in favor of wanting to get the whole thing.
Well, the other part is that our board is made up of representatives from all 3 counties. And so that, the representatives, for example, from Washington County will make the recommendations that they think is right for their county. The same will happen in Warren, the same will happen in Saratoga.
Okay.
And then the collective board will decide. So because it's not a decision that I made.
No, I understand.
Brian and then Sue.
How many years behind are they on the statistics they use for the allocation?
Well, they use a couple of different surveys, so it could be anywhere from 2 years to 4 years. Because some of the data comes from the 2020 census,
Oh, yeah,
but
'cause
there's
it
also a community survey.
would have to be extremely old because we lost our biggest employer in Great Meadow. And we lost Essity and Middle Falls. So we lost more jobs probably than Saratoga's created. So it's kind of very interesting
Well,
how we would lose any amount of, we should have actually more because of our losses. We're kind of in a dire situation here, so I just wanted to point that out. I mean, I realize it takes time for that to all work through and for you to figure that all out.
the department, the statisticians at the Department of Labor also take into account the number, your usage in your system. So how many people have been served? So that is one part of the calculation that they do look at, because the 2020 census, goes back in time. It is a retrospective look. But the other part of that, and I mentioned this when I was here the last time, The problem with Washington County, and we're gonna experience the exact same thing, the prison closure that was announced last week, is that none of those people are laid off or factored into the statistics. And we know in reality, people have lost their jobs as a result of these prison closures. But because they are all offered jobs in other parts of the state, they don't go into the calculation for a mass layoff. But for example, Saratoga, when Quad Graphics closed, and there were 410 people who lost their jobs, that would be factored in. The Essity closure, that had affected all 3 counties. When Glens Falls Cement closed, that affected just Warren County. So, there are other factors that they do utilize when the economists are running the numbers, but it's not, it's all not based on contemporaneous documents.
It just took a lot of jobs out of our workforce, was all,
Absolutely.
which is a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Sue,
2 questions. Could this committee get that data from the information that was received from the Department of Labor so that we could review it?
Sure, I was provided, yeah, was provided our meeting, so we absolutely could.
Thank you. So that would be one. The other thing, even like with the BOCES closure, would that be, now it's in Washington County now, because Saratoga County, would those jobs be the same way as the prison? They're not counted?
I'm not sure because I don't know if the jobs are gonna be lost here because they're just gonna be moving to another location. I don't believe there's any layoffs as a result of, transferring the Hudson Falls BOCES staff to the new location at exit 16.
So
So there have been
employment,
none of those announced.
yeah, so the employment wouldn't be the issue, it's just the helping our younger people get involved in CTE practices because they have to go further. So there is like a double whammy there for Washington County.
County
Well,
jobs still
and-
lost.
And we are trying to we do have a lot of initiatives going on about trying to get the middle school students and the high school students interested in the trades. So there are lots of activities and events in that way.
Thank you.
Kathy,
Brian
Dave,
mentioned,
you're next.
Brian mentioned the prison, and that reminded me, one of the other questions was, we had asked for a one-time, I believe there was that part of the program where we could ask, was there a one-time funding shift to help because we lost so many jobs? And Brian mentioned prison, that reminded me, that was one of the other things we asked about last time, was, well, when you made the request, and did you find anything out?
There is, so it is vaguely written into our multi-jurisdictional agreement that you can transfer funds internally. The discussion that we had at the board meeting last week was if it's an even swap, that's fine. As a matter of fact, Warren and Washington County did switch some adult and dislocated worker money. I think there was $25,000 that moved from one system to another. Because again, we have to use the buckets of money in the buckets that are provided. And so that can happen easily. What is more difficult would be if somebody if there was a mass layoff, and you didn't have money and you had to say, we need $100,000 and it has to come from the other 2 counties. That is something that would have to go through a board process like this because you're actually taking money away from another location. So it just has to be in a cooperative agreement between. So that's what we discussed last time. And I'm sure that will be part of a resolution once we pass the new allocation.
Dave,
So a question on BOCES. The instance relocating to Wilton out of Washington County. Doesn't that count in loss of jobs for Washington County?
Not unless they're laid off and they go on unemployment, for example, because then they're not. The statistics there's in the Department of Labor, for example, there's a UI division. So if somebody's laid off, that goes into calculations for a mass layoff, for example. But if people are offered a reload to another place and they take that, then there's no statistics that demonstrate that those people have been.
So we lost 7,800 jobs already. Just because of relocation, so they don't count in number of jobs we have and allocations for help replacing those jobs.
Not in this structure.
Seems to me the structure's wrong.
If I may,
Yes.
if I interrupt, mention we have a system that the state of New York, in their wisdom, they put a bunch of bureaucrats and economists in a room and came up with a very predictable result of an opaque process that has unintended consequences. But it is the cards for Dallas we have to deal with. Shelley had asked, and one of the things we are going to look at is that very question: how do we end up looking at an efficient way to move stuff between counties, because we are driving looking through the rearview mirror. We're dealing with 2 years ago problems by the time we get compensated for them, which does not yield good results. One of the reasons I'm here is to try to learn what you guys see as concerns, because these are the things that I've spent a lot of time talking with Shelley and the other two center directors, trying to figure out ways that we can be more, results oriented and actually address today's problems. But as you all know, the state does not always make it particularly easy to move money around and do things in a way that I might do in a private business.
We're good at taking it away.
Are you done, Dave?
And under the federal.
Jim and then Charlie.
So a question I have, just building on what Dave said. Suppose a company closes here. And they have facilities in other states. And they say to the employees, you could go to work in the other states. Does the county where that was here that closed, did we lose jobs? Because we certainly did.
Sounds like you did with
Yes.
Quad Graphics.
But
Because
it
Quad
sounds
Graphics
like
moved.
the examples you're giving, that wouldn't count as
I
losing
think it
jobs.
does.
Yes, well, it does. There are other. So if you look at it from an unemployment perspective, only the people that lost their job, that didn't accept a reload, but there's no longer a job for them here. They would go into the unemployment system, and therefore they would be calculated in the statistics.
They're measuring unemployment, not employment.
Right,
It's the problem.
yeah,
Yeah,
because there's
Charlie?
variable with that.
I'm picking up both on Dave and Nolan's point. So as far as workforce development, if workforce leaves, we don't develop it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if they still stay employed, we don't develop anything.
They go someplace else and work,
Right.
because the company moved them, or the state moved them, gave them the opportunity. Our workforce here shrunk, but we don't develop our workforce with this. So it's not a workforce development. I'm wondering why one would support workforce development that's not encouraging workforce growth.
The Workforce Development and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act has been around for a long time. In its current form, it's been around for about 20 years. And it has really become, or I'm going to compare it to old JTPA, the Job Training and Partnership Act. And that was during the NAFTA treaty days, when we used to be able, if a company closed, and I know we've all had companies, plant closures here. And so JTPA, for example, would send somebody to college for 2 years to be able to be retrained in a growing field, so that person could remain employed for the rest of their life. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is a little bit different because it's looking at getting people out of poverty into full-time regular jobs with benefits. And so it's a perspective shift. So we work with a lot of underserved individuals. Criteria that we have to work with for our adult dislocated worker and youth populations is very stringent. And so the dislocated worker money is very difficult to use. And so when a plant closes, there has to be certain criteria that's met before their people can get services. We have those buckets of money that we have to be used very specifically. Youth is highly restricted with how we use it. Adults are also, they have to qualify in order to be able to utilize the resources that we have that have been diminishing through the years. We lose between 5 and 10% of our allocations every program year. So that answers your question.
Jay?
I love Mr. Jake's comments. As a businessman, it's very frustrating to look at money getting thrown around. Throwing in money from the state and the counties and whatever, doing all this. On the other side of it is a businessman's perspective. Do we ever have follow-up and quantitative results so that we know what county we've made any gains throwing this money in there to train people? Do we know if people are getting jobs or staying jobs? I mean, or are we just feeling good about what we're doing?
You know, every 4 years, we have to go through a process and we're in the middle of it right now. I just wrote a local plan. And so it looks at the area. So we all know, we've lived here a long time. We have plant closures and so it changes the fabric. We used to be a highly industrialized area with a lot of manufacturing jobs. And that has changed over time, you know, and that has also changed across the United States. But as we look at it, there are priority occupations. So the 4-year plan that we just wrote identifies those up and coming professions that we want to fund people. So if there is a layoff and we do get people that come to our career centers, if we're going to send them for retraining, it has to be in one of the priority occupations so that we know that they will be able to be reemployed when they get done with the training and development that we put them through. You know, we've done a lot of CDL training for folks, like for example, when the quad location closed, we trained a lot of folks for CDL jobs. And some of them were like, I worked 12-hour shifts for my whole 20-year career. And now I want to be out in the open. So we spent, it was those funding for CDL drivers at anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000. So we invest where people are going to grow. So those priority occupations take the occupational outlooks where the growth is going to happen. And so when we're encouraging people to look at, okay, well, you are here, you got laid off from this job. It is a job with diminishing returns. There's not going to be a lot of those kinds of opportunities available in the region. How about if we look at this field where we can send you to classes and you can get a certificate or whatever, so that you can get reemployed in one of those occupations that's growing.
And if I can add to that too, under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, there are built-in structures of indicators of performance, which include employment. And if we are sending them to some type of training, are they having medical skill gains during that time that they're enrolled, and are they attaining the credential? And so all of those things are measured and are freely available on the Department of Labor's website. Unfortunately, the way it's broken down, it's only broken down by the workforce development areas. So we are, as a unit, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington. So when you're looking at those numbers, that's what we're doing. But we've been fortunate enough that we've broken down and really are looking at data management system and the data that's going into that over the last 11 months. So we are kind of getting down into that nitty-gritty of what is happening and where that kind of stuff is going and where our set efforts. But that's going to take time because there isn't something readily available, but it is stuff that we're continually looking at and evaluating.
So at some point next year, we could probably get maybe a kind of a rough idea on how Washington County has been helped out on this.
Yeah, so what I've done for the last 11 months, and I break stuff down and I bring it to our board meetings of what's going into that data management system, what kind of elements, how many people are enrolled, how many people have exited, how many people are in follow-up, how many services has each county delivered, how are we looking at the system, how are we looking individually. The next piece of this is going to be implementing that last piece of the credential attainment, measurable skill gains, the stuff that those parts that matter. The great thing about, there's a lot of limiting things about the data management system, as anybody who's ever worked with the data management system experiences. However, we are trying to overcome some of that stuff, and we're really getting into the pieces that are going into that. And magically in the bureaucratic system, we do have the Department of Tax and Finance talking to our data management system. So if we can't get somebody to follow up and let us know that we're employed so we can collect that data, as long as we have their social security number, those two things talk and say, oh, this person did get a job and this is how much money they're making. So we are getting credit for those opportunities when sometimes we can't follow up, because working with humans, that's kind of how it works.
We have things that are called priority occupation, so we have a list. And so when we have somebody come into the career center and they get coaching, counseling, and training on job skills, if they're looking for their next career, then we look at those priority occupations. So this is an area that's gonna be growing in the state of New York. We know that. And so we'd be happy to fund them for that kind of training.
And I only ask these things because of that. I mean, we're all for putting money in or working with it. We're getting results out the backside. And
Right.
that's the important thing.
Yeah, we actually don't fund things that are for self-employment, for example. We want industry statistics to back where we spend our money. So we want to invest in people so they could get the ROI themselves.
Nate, and then Sue.
In September, you were here, I believe it was September, and we visited this subject. Then in October, we were told you had made no changes to your plan that you submitted. Today, what has changed from September when you gave the initial presentation?
The only thing that's changed is the allocation discussion has moved forward, and so we were able to get the data and statistics from the Department of Labor Statistical Department, and so we
Well,
will.
we as a board have none of that information right now.
Well,
I mean, I understand that you had the discussion, but we have, as a board, don't know where we are today versus where we were in September. We said, no.
Nothing's changed. They're just in the discussion stages.
And I believe that this body wanted to see that there was forward momentum on the allocation discussion. The budget was not going to change. It's very similar to past budgets. But it was the issue of the allocation discussion, which is very highly complex. There's no doubt about it. And the board had a really good discussion. Gary, you might want to speak to that. I mean, it was a very robust discussion. We had two representatives from the Department of Labor come in to talk about the allocation process, the formulas, the calculations, and it was very instructive for the board.
And quite frankly, I'm thrilled that, I believe it was, I don't know if that was Shelley or coming out of this meeting. I'm so glad that somebody did go back and question the allocation, because we found that for the last 20 years, there's been a significant error in the way the calculation was been done. It's been done the way it was taught. Nobody ever went back and looked at the reasons why it was done the way it was done. And going back and reviewing it, I can give you all the details, but I don't want them. But it's basically 20-year-old information as to how we were allocating this. And a lot has changed in the last. So there will obviously be some change. Interestingly, the numbers for Washington don't look like they changed dramatically. We had some great discussions from the board, great discussions. In reality, given where we are in this fiscal year of July to June, we're looking at that as a going forward process. Spent a lot of time with Shelley and the other two center directors trying to understand a little bit more about what they do. And ways that we can make this thing better. What we opted to do is simply look at, as if then, the question described it well, to the state run the numbers as if each county was its own, and then take a look at what are the percentages of the total that's coming in is allocated on each county, and as a starting point, looking at how that is going, and using that as the allocation. As we mature that system, my hope is that we will figure out our own ways. And I've challenged the center directors to come up with some creative ways to look at that. What are some things that go into that? The system right now is based on the statistics that are put together by the Department of Labor. It does not have any factor in there for efficacy whatsoever. It's just based on need, not based on how good a job you do. Is that what we want to do? That's a good conversation that the workforce development board is going to be having over the next 7 months. And that's something government deals with all the time. Do you do it based on need or do you do it based on productivity? That is a very common question, and it is not a simple answer or a simple discussion. That's mentioned for our next board meeting, put on what is the trend line of what we have had for allocation over the last 5 or so years, what would the new formula be, and then taking a look. The biggest issue is Warren County. The way the formula looked, Warren County takes a big hit, which would say on one hand, Warren County's been overcompensated for years, therefore, let's take that away. On the other hand, you could say, gosh, you're asking an awful big hit at one time. That's also a true statement, and we have to have a discussion as a board. Do you have a transition year? Do you do it all at once? Do you catch it up? And then what do you do beyond there? We're also going to take a look at, as we discussed on the request for in Great Meadows as a perfect example, Kelly could use some extra resources. While we had a technical ability to do it, we did not have a process to do it that was easy to navigate. We need to figure out what that process is. We do not know necessarily, we don't have an easy way for somebody to come in and do that. I'm also challenging the center directors to get better at working a little better together, so that the three of them are looking at themselves. And again, I'll credit Shelley one more time. She's doing an excellent job. She said, you know, like us to look at this as a system, not as three competing counties that we're all rallying. And that would become that's a nice goal. That will also take a little bit of time to get there for a variety of reasons, some of which are very obvious. It is a zero-sum game. Every dollar that moves to one county is a dollar that moves away from another. And, you know, nobody wants to be the one to volunteer to give up their income for understandable reasons.
Well, and as I identified, we get 3 buckets of money: adult, dislocated, worker, and youth. So the new allocations that were put together by the Department of Labor for Washington County, the adult allocation goes up, the youth allocation goes up, but the dislocated worker allocation goes down. And so and we do have to spend money in those buckets. So, you know, that's pretty important. But the other thing is that our structure does give us some fluidity, which is a very positive thing. And that's where the multi-jurisdictional agreement comes in. So, you know, I mentioned like the allocations, the workforce board is a cost, but we do all the administrative paperwork. We write the local plan, the regional plan, the memorandums of understanding with 18 different partners that we deal with. And so we have to be the catalyst. We do all the reporting for the federal requirements of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So there's many things that we do, but internally, when Saratoga County, for example, paid for the workforce board over the last 4 program years, you know, that saved Washington County $106,000. So it's our system does have some fluidity in it so that we can make some accommodations as we grow, or if the statistics are failing us and we have to move some money within the system, we have the ability to do that. And so in a positive way, we're doing that.
I have Sue and then Sam.
I appreciate all you do. I mean, workforce development is something that Washington County really needs to look at to bring in, our level of poverty up, because we are a poor county. Everybody understands that. I think we're gonna need to start with our youth, because if we don't start with our youth at a high school level and provide CTE, Whitehall right now is gonna have to have kids go on a bus from probably Whitehall down to, and what's gonna happen there is many are gonna choose not to go. So it's only, we're shooting ourselves in the foot over and over and over in Washington County. So we have to figure out a way to build up our revenue, build up our jobs. If the kids do decide to go down there, potentially they're gonna work in Saratoga County or work somewhere in the capital region. We would like them to work here. So if we don't start thinking outside the box a little bit, we need CTE programs within high schools. Yet nobody can afford to do that. So how do we go forward with that? So if you guys have any ideas, that would be a really important aspect 20 years from now, to see where we are and how we got there. So we're gonna have to be do some visionary stuff.
There are some pilot programs that are happening right now, even in Warren County, because northern Warren County is very different than southern Warren County. And so they have some pilot programs where, for example, at Warrensburg Central School, they're offering some of the vocational education programs right there. So there are structures that, you know, the systems are working on putting in place, but we absolutely want more young people to go into, you know, vocational trades, and we are supporting.
And you're 100% correct. It is a downward spiral. If you don't have the jobs, you don't have the employers, you don't have the employers, you don't have, it feeds on itself.
Yeah. And we're in that spot. Washington County is right now.
Sam?
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to thank you for going through the analysis process, because I have been for many years chairman of the Washington County EOC, and said for years that we weren't getting our allocation in Washington County we should get, and it fell on deaf ears. And it still bothers me until the fact that we didn't approve a resolution at budget for a budget before we finally got someone to take action on those. Because for years, as you just indicated, Warren County was getting more than they should have got, so that means the province of Saratoga and Washington weren't getting what they should have got. And we can't go back and recap that. We can learn for the future as we deal with these things. And like Jay said, his question about, are we learning anything from this? And I think that if the board from the work board, if they didn't receive any other message, it's that we do have to, when one of the members from the 3 counties says they think there's a problem, we need to act on it rather than just shelf it and leave it here for years to go ahead.
I took over as chair in July. One of the things that I have made a commitment to in talking to the board, particularly, and I've not had this with any of the supervisors in the 3 counties, because I haven't had audience with any of them before today, is that we need to do a better job of communication and better job of transparency. We have been bad at that, as evidenced by this, and again, that's why I'm here, is to try to learn and figure out how to do that better. We have not done a good job of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
How much does Washington County stand to lose under this new calculation?
They gain, they don't lose.
So both Saratoga and Washington County get more, and Warren County gets less.
Yes.
Kathy,
I think last time you brought your budget, and that's what brought all these questions, was you wanted us to okay your budget, and that's where a lot of the questions came from. At this point, you're already 6 months into the year, there's not a lot we can do to stop the budget that's been done. One of our concerns was that salaries going to administration was one of the concerns that were brought up by the supervisor in the committee. I think so I have a couple questions about that. One is, you get your allocation and it's spread out between the 3 counties. And I think we all agree that the centers are actually the most important part of the workforce program. And I guess my own opinion is going forward, and hopefully the other supervisors agree, we want as much money of that allocation going to the centers to people, and maybe not as much to administration, if that's possible. And that was one of the big questions that came up with the budget. And like I said, at this point, there's not a lot we can do to fix a budget that's already been in effect for 6 months. But if possible, next year, if you could bring the budget to us maybe in May, so then we can ask all of our questions, so that they would be answered when you want us to vote on something in June to take effect on July 1st. Because we didn't have that information and we didn't get to ask our questions, didn't get our answers in a timely fashion to act on it when you needed us to. So my suggestion is that you bring budget ahead to us in May so we can ask the questions. And with in mind, when you're designing the budget, that the actual centers itself are really the most important, and the workload's gonna increase. And we don't even know if there's gonna be real funding next year anyway, but with all that into consideration, I think that would make it a lot easier for all of us here and the committees and probably the other counties, if we got a chance to see that ahead of time and ask the questions.
We just approved our schedule for next year, so last week. And so we're gonna start our budgeting process in April. And so we've got our structures in place to be able to do it sooner. And some of it will have to do with how the federal funding comes through, because we don't know what cuts are coming. They've warned us that there are cuts coming, but we've been getting about a 5% decrease in the year anyway. But we have put it in our schedule to start sooner than we have previously.
So the decrease is in your budget, just something to think about for the future. So when you say you get this 5% decrease every year, is that being affected? Are only the centers being affected in their programs by this 5% decrease? Or is the administration and the salaries and the benefits being looked at as well?
There are formulas that are used, and so we have the buckets of money that I talked about, adult, dislocated worker and youth. It is very prescribed with how we can spend the money and use the money. We always a highly restricted system. So there is some crossover with adult dislocated worker money that we can move, with money that not be moved. And there's administrative money that can't be moved. And the requirements for what we need to provide to the state and the federal government as far as reporting goes will require that we're always gonna have administrative overhead. But we are looking at our operations processes right now. We're looking at who we're serving, how we're serving them. And in those, the pockets of money, adult dislocated worker and youth, where are we utilizing those resources? Again, youth money is highly restricted. We don't have a lot of ability to navigate those. The adult and dislocated worker buckets, we do.
Yeah, I wasn't criticizing the programs and how they were sent. So we just went through a really tough budget here. Going into next year, Warren County and Saratoga County are gonna be having the same problems we are, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
But like with every other program, the people are the ones we need to help, so that's why I was questioning. Is there money that's going to administrative that could be going to the programs, because as the economy continues to be difficult, that's where the people need help.
If I may, to the first, on your question of the timing, while the budget process that Gretchen has is, we will go through the budget process. One of the ways that I have my career, and I'm assuming you in your own towns, there are usually one or two key issues, and the rest of it, you spend all the time on it. But the key issues of the IMA go to the key issues first kind of guys. That's why in January, the two things are, I want to get the board's commitment on what direction are we going with the allocation process. We just make a commitment to that before we even start budgeting. Secondly, is the question of overhead. And I've asked Gretchen, is the second item to have on that agenda, what are the top 10 expenses, not buckets, but the actual expenses? I mean, I don't care what the buckets it's in the P&L, that's not the relevant part. Is this piece of software valuable to us or not? What are we spending on it? 75% of the budget is these two women, which is why it's awkward for them to talk about it. Perhaps I would maintain that what I see, and again, engage the center directors in this. I think that the addition of the deputy, the amount of work, if we eliminated Cassie's job, the amount of work that would fall down on the center directors would make their jobs so much harder that they would actually do a worse job serving individuals. That is my belief on what I know today. I need to have that conversation with the center directors of the board, see, do we believe that going forward? Again, I just have one vote, but there are times when I can make more money cutting labor in the store, but I'll end up doing less business. Because I've got a crappier store. There are times you've got to invest the money to get there.
I just want to add, to it is how our structure currently works with the Workforce Development Board budget. If we don't, whatever money that doesn't get spent that was allocated in the budget, that stays with the centers. And whatever money is spent by the Workforce Development Board, only the percentage, so let's say Saratoga County gets 40% of the allocation, they pay for 40% of the Workforce Development Board budget. And so it goes down like that across, just so that way, I don't know if that's something everybody's aware of how it breaks down, because it's weird. And it's not like divided by grade in every county, it's based on your allocation and how much money you get from the overall money, and any money that doesn't get spent by us stays in the centers. Because the system works is, they wait until we know what was actually spent in PY 24, and, which is program year, sorry, program year 24, and then they let that know, and then they say how much is going back. So that way the money is always still in the county, it's not going back. If that provides any clarity for you on that. And historically, we have been underspent on budget, since program year 21.
So I'm not insulting anything on what's being.
Oh, no, I
done,
was just wanting to let you
but
know.
We're being asked to approve something, and we had a lot of questions when it came to September. So we're just trying to put out there.
And I agree with
to try
that
and avoid
100%.
questions coming forward the next year, so that we can't do anything about the past year, but let's do the best we can for the next year and ask our questions now, so you know.
Exactly. I completely agree with that.
Dave, you have a question?
Well, I do. Go back on the position. Initially, you put a position in because Gretchen is gonna retire.
I gotta say correct,
Doing something. Well, that's what it was explained to us.
understood.
And all of a sudden, oh, we need this extra position. So all of a sudden, we got $100,000 more additional overhead coming across. Especially in lean times in counties like Washington. Warren's having bad times, a lot of other counties have bad times. So all of a sudden, we see additional expense. And I think the biggest thing was the communications incorrect on what the position was, why it was, and why it was necessary. Because all of a sudden it was, oh, she's not gonna take over, she's gonna do this data because we think data is very important. So there's a lot of miscommunication here.
100% of
And I think our feeling was Washington County is being left out of the communication process.
You were in good company. Saratoga and Warren are also being left out, and that's one of the things we need to do a much better job of.
You done, Dave? Brian,
I think the bigger thing we gotta remember now is this is regional for a reason. And that we shouldn't be happy that Warren County's losing money and we're in Saratoga or Gator. That's not the deal here. The fact Liza actually runs a hell of a program in Warren County, so maybe the more money made them able to do that. But it gives us something to go by on how things can be done. So I think in the bigger picture is how do we work together? Because the pool of money is gonna be the same no matter how they divide it up. We just want the most result for that pool of money. Because if all three counties succeed, we're better than if one of the three or two of the three succeed. That would be my belief.
Jay,
And do we need a motion then to approve the budget?
we need a motion to approve the budget and send it to the full board for then to approve a resolution in our December meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Brian. Any discussion on the motion? Sue?
I agree with the motion, but I would like an amendment to that motion to make sure the communications stay more current with this board so that we can make appropriate, and we can have appropriate discussion.
And one of the things I've been thinking about this now for several months, is and it may vary by county, is trying to figure out with whom should we communicate? Is it with the county administrator? Is it in this county through this committee? And again, I accept that may be a different answer in Saratoga County than it is in Washington County, but what is the easy way, without putting the core burden on Laura? Every burden thrown on her, you don't know what to do, we're gonna make Laura do it. I understand, that's what Laura's job.
But that's where our economic development lies, so through Laura makes the most sense right at this time.
Put you in this committee.
And she is on the committee, but again, above and beyond that, we do have a responsibility that, we are all appointed by boards of supervisors. You are the elected representatives. We are either hired or appointed. You guys have to answer to people in ways that we don't. I totally understand and appreciate that. So we will endeavor to make better communication with all three counties, and I'm still noodling with Gretchen on what's the most efficient way to do that without wasting your time at the same time.
Well, Gary, I'm glad to see a smile on your face now, because when you come in, you did not have a smile, you had concerns, and I think you feel a lot better. I know we feel a lot better.
I've known Mr. Campbell a long time. You know, I would have been smiling.
That's why he wasn't smiling. You probably don't remember the first time you probably don't remember the first time that we met.
No.
I'll tell you later, but I'd like to, at this time, we're
We gotta
gonna,
do our vote.
I know it, but I have not had my chance to speak. And all I wanted to say was that to summarize this meeting, I think this was the most educational meeting I've seen and listened to regarding our workforce development oversight here. And I'm glad that it occurred. I really am, even though it took a long time. And just so everybody understands what we're voting on, we're approving the budget that originated back in July, ends this June.
Oh, wait a minute, Sue had some kind of an amendment.
Just to
Just wanted to add to it.
add to it as far as open communications between the workforce development.
So do you want to add to his motion, or are you making an amendment to put something in the motion?
Statement.
Was making a statement.
Okay, so you got that?
So we.
So anyways, and we've established, going forward, the chain of contact is through Laura's office, is that where, so everybody's on the same page? The best thing is we all, when we leave here, we're all on the same page. So
And can I just,
I'd love to have you talk.
so the structure right now is we, through Shelley or whoever she designates, when she has a request to make that typically originated through the board, would come to this committee. And starting last year, Leap is now making approximate quarterly presentations on how it's going. I can report to this committee on activity that happens at the board in addition to the summaries that Gretchen is reporting. I just want to be clear on who's communicating what. I think you meant to say that Shelley's reporting. You said that Gretchen's reporting. So. Oh, did I say, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
that Shelley's reporting. Yeah.
So I think Shelley quarterly and you whenever
And I
it fills
will
in
do
between.
additional.
Yeah, I think that's ideal. Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready to make a motion to approve the 2025?
Already done that. Need to vote.
What?
We have a motion, we have a second.
Yeah.
The motion is to approve the budget, their budget. So that's what, yeah. So that's what I'm just reinserting, the motion is to approve their budget for 2025. Huh?
It's 25, 26.
It's program year 25. That's. It goes from.
You know, so far I've been right every time. I appreciate everybody correcting. So far I've been right every time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carry. You oppose?
Yeah.
One, opposition. Brian.
I'd like to make a comment because since we're all talking about economic development, we don't get this opportunity very often. I would like to commend Gary Dake for stewards and what they bring to our county, a lot of sales tax, a lot of damn good ice cream, and it's the only thing that kept me alive during the budget process was my hot foot Sunday across the road. I'd walk over there, that was my comfort food, my downtime, and I survived. I might have not that bound, but hey, it was all worth it. So, thanks to stewards for being in Washington County. We really appreciate it, and you've been good partners.
Washington County doing very good to us, as we know, 3/4 of the bill coming through my plant comes out of Washington County. I got 10 stores in Washington County. It's very important to me.
I'm trying to think, it's probably 4 decades we've known each other.
That's about that.
So now you're all the way up to where he's pusher.
Is there anything to add to this conversation before we move on? Gretchen, thank you for taking your time to explain this as thorough as you did. And Gary, pleasure seeing you again. You didn't have any gray in your face. I saw you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. I hear the eggnog great. Okay, that goes over. The guy that lives in the.
Okay, are we ready? Feel like we almost need to have a recess. Tourism update.
So I just have a couple of quick things. I want to give you an update on the short-term rental software platform, Deckard. As I mentioned to this committee before, despite sort of a lot of promises from the software platform, every time we turn around, there's another delay and another problem. We had hoped to have this live a month ago. It still isn't. As of a conversation yesterday, we were to have a live link by last night. That still hasn't happened. I'm hoping it's by today. I'm reasonably confident, and we're actually gonna do some demo testing with a couple of the short-term rental operators to make sure that they can log into the system, get their electronic payments done, get their registration done, et cetera. We're gonna try and get that tested if we can by tomorrow, if not, early next week. So it's been slow, but it is making progress. And once it actually goes online, what will happen is we've crafted a letter. So the software platform, basically what it does is it sends bots out into the internet world. And based on the information that it scrubs, it determines, based on it, advertising, et cetera, where the short-term rental hosts are. A letter will then be sent to, Deckard is going to do this for us. They will send a letter to every short-term rental host in the county saying that they've been identified as a probable operator, informed of the new state regulations, which is similar to what we did in at Mandy's, at the Mandy's nursery a month or so ago, to just try and keep the public aware of this is the new regulation, this is what you'll be required to do. So again, those letters should start going out within the next couple of weeks, and we'll hopefully start seeing registrations soon. And then once those registrations happen, there's still the issue of how the operators, other than Airbnb, that's going to be Vrbo, it's going to be camping platforms, any operator that is booking an overnight stay on the internet is subject to this. So there's still going to be some figuring this out as we go along to determine how we make sure that everybody is compliant, and make sure that we're getting the occupancy data from all. So work in progress. It's been slower than we had hoped, but it is making progress.
Jim Nolan has a question on that.
When did or do the regulations take effect?
So as of March, I believe, of this year, all of the online booking platforms were required to start collecting and remitting sales tax. For occupancy tax, all counties were given an option to either opt in or opt out by November. If you opt out, you can still negotiate agreements with the platforms, but the platforms aren't necessarily required to collect that occupancy tax. If you opt in, the requirement to collect occupancy tax is effective immediately when you have an online registration process. So the minute our online registration is live, short-term rental hosts are now required to be, again, the onus, I can't even speak, is actually on the hosts. But the state law provides a process by which the online platforms can collect on their behalf. But if there is a problem with the online platform, it's still technically the host's response.
This software will also identify people that aren't using those platforms, that are doing it on their own. Am I right?
The regulation is if they are marketing a room on an online platform.
And so if they're doing it on their own.
If they're doing it on their own and they're booking it on the internet, so like, in other words, if you're a B&B and you're offering the ability to register for an overnight stay on the internet, then I believe that they would technically still be responsible. But if it's a word of mouth thing, then we would have a hard time, I think, making that responsible.
Or did you say every town has to opt in or opt out?
County.
Oh, county. Oh,
The only difference is individual towns that prior to the adoption of this law that had their own registration process are allowed to keep that. So the town of Fort Anne is the only one in the county that pertains to. Once the county system is online, and in fact, it's already too late for all of the towns, any town that wanted to begin their own online registration process had a window of time to do it. That window is now closed. So the way that it will work going forward is Fort Anne registration will continue. So essentially, hosts as of right now in the town of Fort Anne will have to pay both the town and the county to register their online overnight stays.
Sam, did you have a question or comment?
No, that was not that. My concern is, I know they're gonna send the letter out, is that there's something in there that indicates what was just said, so that at the end of the year, on our 50+ places, we're not running around now trying to get near saying to us, no, we don't have to register according to your local law for the town. And you know what I'm saying?
I'll have to look into that because it's a template letter that Deckard is sending out. So either we would have to send everybody in the county a letter saying, if you happen to be in the town of Fort Anne.
They would have to say, tell
Well,
you,
it shouldn't be that, I would think it shouldn't be that hard to put a disclaimer that
Right.
says, if you're in the town of Fort Anne.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
You will have to pay an additional
So
registration.
we just
Town of
sent
Fort
that
Anne.
letter to Deckard yesterday, but I can go back and look at it and see if there's something that we can alter that makes sure that there is a distinction between
yeah.
Fort
Because
Anne.
it's two different things. The towns that don't have it are probably not having a fee paid on those short-term rentals, which are business. And that's what we're doing, we're not collecting sales tax. We're just,
No, but the online platform hosts are now required to collect. I mean, as you know, it gets remitted to the state, not the county.
right.
The state eventually gives it
Right.
back to the
So my
county.
point being is we're not an online host, so we aren't gonna be collecting the sales tax.
Right.
Okay,
There's no requirement for you to do that. It's the online booking platforms.
but the individual public out there that's got the short-term rentals are required to register with us as a
Correct.
short-term rental, okay? So my point being is, if that doesn't say it, I can see the picture now, we're gonna consider it. We've already done this with the state, we've already registered, so we don't need to pay you, we don't need to register with you, we have to renew it on an annual basis.
Yeah, let me look at the letter and see what we can do to amend the letter. We did make that point clear when we did the training session out at Mandy Spring. We made it very clear that you're gonna have to register with both Fort Anne and the county, and there will be a registration fee for both.
And I know we've got several of them that get big dollars, because they do it just by word of mouth, they get online, and then when they're family after family after family. Up they have done those that aren't marketed anywhere on any platform.
So this would be a Dan question, but I would imagine that depending on what Fort Anne's local law looked like, you might have the ability to address that, but the county, based on the state law, if the state law says the requirement is they're booking an online platform and you're saying they're doing it by word of mouth, I think the county would have a hard time pursuing registration requirements, whereas Fort Anne might be able to.
Yeah, well, they're registered in the town, we know they're in the town, but they're not doing it on their platform.
Right.
And those, we were hoping that would be trickle out to the worst, and you get it.
And Fort Anne require them to be on the county platform. That would be the interesting. That would be the way that would be taken care of.
They would get it into your system.
If you could get that in your law that they're required to be on the county.
Just point of clarity, when somebody says Dan and they point this way, they're not referring to me, they're referring to him for information.
But more years
I thought
experience.
it was you, Dean.
Sue,
Just, we're on the disclaimer, town of Fort Anne is annual, fee, right, and the county is biannual. Sorry.
I think probably wouldn't have to go into too much detail, other than if you're in the town of Fort Anne, make sure you check your own local laws, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
okay. Have we got that covered?
Okay, so I have one more point to make that's also related to this. So this actually came up at the training session that we did at Mandy Spring Nursery, whatever it was, about 6 weeks ago. So we've actually got a number of campground owners within the county. And forgive me, I cannot remember if we discussed this at a previous meeting. I couldn't find it in the minutes. So the question came up, the state regulation says host. It doesn't specify, for example, if you are a campground and you are a parcel owner and you've got 250 campground spots, are you paying the county required $250 registration fee per campground spot or per campground owner? So that question came up. Al at that meeting said he thought that it was a good point. And he would be in favor of the county board essentially saying a $250 registration fee for each campground, not, because if we try and assess $250 on every 10 by 10 site, we're gonna put these guys out of business.
Well, I wouldn't see it as being any different than A 250 hotel room,
250
each room is,
Each, you know, for one house with one room, and then he said, okay, I'm gonna rent out 2 rooms instead. Charge it per room, charge it for the entity.
So we just wanted clarity from the board that that is acceptable, that we will be looking for a single registration fee from campground owners.
Do you need a consensus out of this committee or a resolution?
I'm gonna guess resolution because it has to do with money and how we're
Yeah, but
collecting
you're-
fees. I don't
And
know.
I don't know if you're trying to clarify the local law, in which case you got it. This was a local law.
Al can figure that out. How's that?
so right now you've got consensus for them to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
The direction we want it this way.
Right.
Here we go. Anything else on the matter?
Nothing else on that matter. Just one other thing, you probably all got in your inboxes an invitation to the Knox Trail celebration. So if you haven't taken a look at it yet, it will be on Saturday, December 13th. It's a recreation of the Knox Trail, which is basically bringing the cannon and reenactors, et cetera. It starts at Ticonderoga, goes down, comes through here, and then goes down to Saratoga County. The important thing to remember about the Washington County leg is that, so there will be draft horses pulling the sledge that's got the cannon on it. They are going to be staging at the Fort Edward School District. The problem is, we don't know what icy weather is going to be, and they didn't want the draft horses that are gonna be pulling this cannon to potentially slip on that hill coming down from Fort Edward. So although the route says that, you will not actually see the horses, the cannon, and the full procession until you are about where Irving is on, down in Fort Edward. So just be aware, if you plan on being at the event, that you can watch it from the school, but the horses won't be there until around the Irving area.
I think they did that for the horses 250 years ago.
Probably not. They could probably figured out how to keep those poor guys walking. I don't know.
They probably went Burgoyne, they probably went Burgoyne and came out.
I don't think the road was paved.
It probably wasn't.
Good point.
Good point, Dan.
Right, that's it. That's all
That's
I have.
it. For Laura, any questions for Laura? Okay, Laura, thank you. Now it is 20 of 12. I'd have to leave at noon. Sue, you are second in charge if I do have to leave. Okay, next on our agenda is the discussion on the PFOA solid waste up at the transfer station. Correct, Ron? And he has to be on the agenda. Now, he has a handout here, and he called me the other day and asked if there was any way that he could get a sample to have it analyzed. And I don't think the board had a problem with that. But he said that the only way he could get it was to buy a yard. He didn't want to buy a yard. So I think the simple thing, if that's the case, is that the board allows him to go and get a sample. What, no bigger than a shoebox? Is that acceptable, or do we want discussion? I'm glad you're here, Kevin, so I wanted to make a statement of what Ron asked for, and now, Kevin, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Why would we allow that? We wouldn't allow a normal taxpayer to just come get a shoebox, therefore we make them.
Well, I'll tell you the reason for it, unless you're gonna answer that question, Scott, or you want me to answer?
That's another question. Why wouldn't?
Okay, well, here is where we're at, why we would allow it, is that he came to a previous meeting and he asked or stated there were concerns, and there were 2 towns. One was the town of Kingsbury and one was the town of Fort Ann that were concerned and wanted to take action. In fact, we actually kind of pointed to Dan to pursue a resolution on the matter. And then at the last meeting, we said, well, we didn't realize the involvement of this, and we kind of said, let's hold up and look into it more.
We had, it was kind of a spillover between 2, this one and
Public Works.
Yes.
And I certainly, I guess to answer Scott's question, maybe Kevin's question is. Yeah, well, in theory, I don't necessarily have an issue, but. Once you do it for one, you gotta do it for everybody.
Everybody can come in and get a box.
Yes.
I didn't mean to be rude, so like from the sewer district's perspective, you know, we're not required, I believe this sampling is gonna be for PFOAs as we're discussing, I don't know what else we sample.
And I think that's,
You
yeah,
know, we're not required to sample for that, we have sampled for it in the past. And you know, that was taken by sewer district's employees. Someone from the outside seeking to come in and sample ours, you know, I would recommend we sell it by the yard as we do it for any other customer, and then. I don't know what the sampling intention is, even if, you know. Again, we sampled it, the results were within the state guidelines, but. You know, even if the sampling shows something different, it's not the county conducting the sampling, I don't even know what the end game is, I don't.
Is there a better way of doing this? Sort of a way where Ron could actually just observe you getting the sample and sending that, rather than everybody handling this? So that, is there a way to do that instead of buying it and going through all that? I mean, that way they know that it got sent. They actually, you know.
But we have the report here that shows.
What's I'm saying, we have sampled it, and I, you know, in my memo, the sampling is not cheap, I know you're not saying we would be paying for it, but. Why would the district be continuing to resample something we're not?
And how often
required
do you
to do?
resample it? Is this done yearly?
We did it about a year and a half ago, I believe, or 2 years.
So,
When all the PFAS stuff first started coming up, because we wanted to get an idea of where we were at.
so we've done it once, just one time?
Yeah.
And how expensive is it?
I believe it's around $500 for a set of PFAS sample.
Jay,
I guess I would ask if nothing has changed where you're getting stuff and how you're feeling it. Can you provide that sample results instead of going through, or is that something, I'm just.
I have the sample results, yeah, it's in my memo, I mean, it's not the actual result, but you know, I could. That's what numbers. They go by parts per billion in soil.
Not even per million, it's per billion.
Per billion in soil, and drinking water is per trillion, that's probably the number people hear more often when you're talking about drinking water. Our results were 7 parts per billion for PFOA and 9.87 for PFOS. I know it doesn't mean anything to anybody here, but the perspective of, you know, what we think would be the state guidelines with an action level of 20 parts per billion, where they would require you to do repeat sampling, and 50 parts per billion where they would just cut you cold and say you cannot spread that in. That's interim guidelines, it's not even hard limit, because we're waiting to see what the state.
Give us an idea of what Falls was when they had their problem.
Well, that was drinking water in a parts per trillion, I have no idea.
Okay.
Somehow that was in their source water. This is, the DEC, Department of Materials Management, is a whole different. I don't know, not company, but region of the DEC that handles soil and in our case biosolids, and they're the ones that regulate our compost facility, and we, you know, follow what they set out for us, and that's the interim guidelines are from the DEC Materials Management. The Hoosick Falls drinking water issue, that was a Department of Health drinking water situation. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about. This is strictly for land application of biosolids. So it's taking the end product of a sewer plant and spreading it on a farm field. Essentially what land.
So you're testing it as the end product?
We did,
Or you're
yeah.
testing it before it's the end product?
We tested it as the end product. What we do, just a little bit of background on the compost, if I haven't described it to anybody here, is we take the sludge from the sewer plant and we ship it to our biosolids facility along with sludge coming from Lake George. We add wood chips to it, and then we conduct the composting process, which takes about 25 days of heating and cooling. We remove all the pathogens And the end product is a class A sludge in the DEC terms, which can be spread for agricultural or residential use once it becomes class A sludge, which we do repeat testing for that to make sure it is class A sludge, but we're not required PFAS sampling, which is why we're here talking about.
Now, Ron, you're gonna have to wait a minute. I want all the supervisors to have an opportunity to ask their question, make any statements, and department heads to address them, and then I'll let you speak. Charlie, and then Dave.
So I'm not sure everybody has the same definition of PFAS. Does New York State have a specific definition, but oftentimes the public expands that?
So the PFAS term is all of the I don't even know how to pronounce the word, compounds.
Right.
I believe there are 2,000 of them. The main two that the state and other states are looking at are the PFOA and the PFOS or AF. Sorry with all the acronyms, but those are the two that they're kind of developing limits about, because like other situations in our wastewater world, if something is preventing itself, the other ones are most likely there.
So
Those
they're
are the
very
prominent ones.
specific. This definition is very.
Those are two compounds out of the whole bundle that they're looking for. The realm is the PF AS, which is like the whole, that's just what you term all of it together. That's why when I say PFAS, but what we're talking about here is PFOA and PFOS, those two compounds.
That answer your question, Charlie?
Yes.
Dave?
So I got a question that if we allow this to happen, he goes out and gets tested. What does it mean to us? It's not an official testing. We don't have control of the item from when it starts to where it's.
Chain of custody.
Chain of custody. So. Curious what it means to us. If we're doing something, why wouldn't we allow us to do it and have a chain of custody? They can pay for it. You're still gonna have the same bill he's gonna get whether we test or they test it.
Not clear that makes any sense to me.
Well,
But-
I'm sorry, Dan, to answer Dave's point, I was kind of hinting at it earlier, and you know, whether it's Ron or anybody from the public, if they want to come do a sample on anything, you know, if it's not me or one of my guys doing the sample that has, you know, a license to do this kind of sampling, and you know, you could lose your career if you're falsifying or contaminating sample results. You know, I don't see any validity in anybody from anywhere coming to a sample result and saying, look, you know, this is what I found. I can't use that for anything. You know, so I guess that's what is the intention of sampling our sludge and coming up with these sample results.
Scott and then Lance?
Wouldn't it be, you know, our due diligence to test this periodically? And we know what it was, a year and a half. And we're halfway to what the limit is already. How much has it gone up or has it gone down? I think it would be prudent for us to start this kind of testing on a regular basis. At least annually or something.
Well, the only comment I'll make that is it's expensive to test regularly, and I would be hesitant to do it any more than meeting requirements for that kind of cost, but that's just me. Lance?
I guess, Kevin, one of the things that you raised in your letter that you sent us is you said that your primary objection to going through, you know, the sampling is that we're waiting on new standards to come down from the state of New York, but tests that you got right now show that you're within the 0.1.
That's all we wanted to know. Yeah.
Right, so
I can prepare.
do you know, is New York actually working on that right now? And is there an event horizon for it happening?
The only thing I know is it was, you know, almost passed March, I believe, by the Senate. It didn't get to the vote or the Assembly. I'm not sure. But you know, I believe it's going to be revisited next year. And that's all we do in our industry is, you know, we we look to the state for guidance and what they come down with, because they have, you know, a much bigger department, much more people working on these things than, you know, than us, and they do a lot more due diligence, and they'll come up with these limits, and if at that point we're, you know, above these limits, by all means, we'll, you know, we'll do what we have to do to get in compliance.
I think the difference may be, and I see the Steuben County resolution is attached. The last time we were talking about doing a moratorium with the county for a period of time. The resolution that is attached to this packet is, you know, much like we are asking the Senate and Assembly to pass this particular set of bills, which I think establishes a 5-year moratorium, presumably will also establish standards that have to be met. Or at least they'll be, I would presume that during the course of the moratorium, you can set those standards. So, you know, and eventually, Ron, I guess I'll ask you the question, are you looking now for this bill to be supported with a resolution or the previous?
That's not very.
I just wanted to add on.
No, and then I want him to speak, but I want to make sure all the supervisors understand everything before I allow it. Lance, oh, Nate, you had your hand up.
Kevin, since you've been down in Fort Edward, how many times have you seen the DEC guidelines change when it comes to these?
For the PFAS, there hasn't been a limit come out that they're enforcing on us.
A minimum either? I mean, it had their set of guidelines change at all since they put out this initial presentation.
Not regarding PFAS.
You know when they were first published, those guidelines?
I don't know. It was recent. All this stuff's coming out in the past couple of years, but I don't know what year that those
I
guidelines
just
came
trying
out.
to figure out how the state is maneuvering their guidelines to reflect the current environment. Because I'm sure that this is a national problem.
It's probably come from the
Right.
EPA, right? Some of it.
Yeah, and there are, you know, 4 or 5 different states which do have limits, and those limits are either 50 parts per billion, which, you know, Michigan, Colorado. There's a couple of states that are different than that. Maryland is 20, Wisconsin is 20. I'll be sure if I think there is a state that doesn't allow any land application at all. I don't know where New York will end up, but the interim guidelines are the 2050.
Currently, does any of that get spread on farmland right now?
Yeah, we currently sell what we can, but we end up with a surplus, and it'll be more expensive to landfill that surplus, so we give away what we can. At the end of the year, we give away around $20,000 worth. I don't know how many yards that is, but to local farmers who spread it. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues this conversation can go, but, you know, one of my recommendations is, you know, why wouldn't the customer, if it is a farmer or somebody who is actually going to be applying this to agricultural, they should do the testing before they, you know, grow product in that. What my thoughts. So we're not required to do this testing.
I'm sorry, who was first? Sam?
Yeah, I just find it kind of ironic, we give away $20,000 worth of stuff at the end of the season, and we can't come up with you know, it kind of defeats the fact that everybody's not gonna pay for it, and we've already established that by giving away free $20,000 worth at the end of the year, we can't give away a free shoebox full of stuff, that doesn't make sense to me.
Scott and then Jay.
So it kind of sticks in my craw a little bit that we're not gonna do something because we don't have to. I think in the interest of public health, $500 a year is nothing, you know. And I believe it, Dan can correct me, we're having this conversation here, if something does happen down the road, we decide not to do anything with this, are we liable?
If we weren't required to do it, we're not eventually. If we are required to do it, it would be. Obviously, you know, anybody could bring a lawsuit, who knows what happens, but at least you know, if we're doing if we're not required to test for something, we don't have to do it. If we do test for it on a regular basis, we could have a problem if we've established a pattern.
Jay,
The being a little on Scott's, and Kevin, you would know this one. Unless we were testing, you know, 3, 4 times a year or whatever. How do we know? This test here may have been a high test or a low test. We do have industrial customers. One week they could have a spill or something that goes into the sewer. They either drives it way up or maybe that happened and this was a high test here, you know, we don't know. You would never know without regular testing on this. It's an unknown, I think, in my opinion.
You know, one doesn't make a standard. So,
Yeah, I can see that point. I will say that, you know, taking a sample from a pile of compost is it's a pile that's been mixed throughout. You know, it's gonna be like a month long, you know, collection that you're gonna grab. It's not like, you know, I'm going to take a sample out of water flow. But to your point, yeah, I mean, throughout, you know, the years, different ones.
Dave, and then Charlie.
So discussion about whether going to wear or not is one thing, but if we're gonna talk about doing testing, shouldn't that be coming out of Public Works? And not out of this committee, that's their oversight committee.
That wouldn't be true.
Charlie,
Sort of similar. Dave, but on the other side, if we are gonna do testing, we can look at this like we do with our landfills, which are closed, periodic testing. And it's gonna be borne by the sewer. I believe, right? It's not gonna be a general levy item. We would be ahead of the curve setting standards or knowing what our.
well, how it originated here surprised me, but this is where it originated. And I agree with everybody that moving forward after today, this is all gonna be dealt with in Public Works. Because I don't think Kevin should be, wait a minute, I don't think Kevin should have to be required to come to our ag and tourism, but it was because of ag and that's what originated it. This was going on farm ground. And it was how we got into the ag committee. So that's how we got here. That explains that. And I think everybody's in agreement from now on, it's gonna be over in Public Works.
I think we're also in agreement that in reality, we wouldn't want to hurt any of our agricultural land or our agricultural county. So, but I still think that this discussion would end up in DPW, that's for sure.
Right, I agree. So regardless, I'm gonna leave in 3 minutes. So that was my
Don't cut yourself
statement.
short.
And Ron, is everybody ready for Ron to have an opportunity to make a statement? Okay, Ron,
Can I come up?
sure, come on up.
Well, I'm gonna go on record saying, I wish I would have been able to talk prior to this conversation back and forth. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that I was sent to Public Works to get a sample because someone here last time around at the Ag Committee raised concern about would it have an impact on the composting facility, which is why I went over there in the first place. But the main reason is the moratorium on the stopping of the spreading of biosolids on land in Washington County. So I hope everybody has a copy of what I produced. And thanks to Kevin, he had given me the 2024 composting facility report to DEC. And from that, I based a lot of, I assessed what was going on with that. We've already talked about a number of things. We talked about the giving away the 20,000. I'd like to direct everybody's attention to page 6.
I get it. Noon, I had to leave. Thank you.
So page 6, it talks about the compost that is produced there at the composting facility. As you're going to see in the first section, they produced 960 cubic yards. That was distributed. And far as the distribution, where was compost used? It was used, according to this, municipal products, 475 cubic yards were sold. In down lower, it shows the donated was 285, so more was donated than sold. Used on site, I couldn't initially figure out what that was, 246. And then 150 left on site. And it was used in the areas of municipal projects, the 246. So I'm not sure, Kevin could probably explain better where that is. And then you see that the 960 cubic yards was sent to landscaping. Now, in Mr. Gorman's memo, he says that he's saying that a lot of this was donated to farms within Washington County. Now, there's no mention, you see there's a spot for agriculture there. It's not checked off. So that is misleading in that way. So there was a total of, if you combine 485, 246, you get 730 cubic yards of compost with no income. And that translates to, the no income is $10,965, and you only made $7,125. It's obvious there's no market for compost being produced at the composting facility. I think what we're avoiding though, forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to interrupt. We're avoiding the cost of transporting it to a landfill and all that, is that? Well,
I don't know what the point is. I mean,
well, I'll address. No, I mean, we're avoiding costs though by giving this away, is that?
right,
That,
correct.
that's what I mean, we're avoiding costs
At
at
a
a
risk.
risk. You're avoiding costs at a risk, so let me go. That was the risk, yeah. Okay. Now, if I refer you to page 3, you'll see that in Mr. Gorman's memo, he cites 700 wet tons were received at the facility. In the report to DEC, 1,556.7 wet tons were produced at the plant. So that's a whole lot, double, more than double the amount of wet tons that were received at that. So I think it was 3 months, right? In the other one, that's the full year, and the other one was just 3 months. Oh, I think I read that. Clarify that. Was that 700 based on
Brian, I
a
lost
year
you.
or?
I don't know what the point is, but that number is us and Lake George. 1,500.
Right, but I mean, you said in your report to DC that you received 50.
It says here, it says,
That's from all
on
sources.
page 6, it says 51 days.
Right.
Page 3, it says the entire.
Yes, there's quite a difference.
So what was the other one? We're
It's only
talking
51 days.
different units, cubic yards and wet tons as well.
Right, but the wet tons is what comes in.
Right.
The cubic yards is what after it's processed and gone through.
Yeah.
So one was less than 2 months compared to a total year. That was the next point I was trying to make. I thought it was 3 months, but 3 months was the oldest on the hammer. It says 51 days.
No, that's the, Brian, that's the.
Oh, that's the case. That's how long it takes to dump.
When it gets there to when it's been processed.
Right. So is this for the whole year? I guess that's what I
Yes.
don't know. It's
Yes.
for the whole
Yeah,
year.
but
It's for
that's,
the
they're
whole-
different units. You're talking cubic yards
Okay.
of dry finished compost versus wet tons, that's 20% on average solid of.
So everything is a for the whole year basis, even though the test occurred just one time during the whole year. Right, this is based on the annual report to DC, which is required in the permit. All right, so talking, you did talk about cost of transporting if you send it to a landfill and the cost related to it. And you also said that you would lose an employee and part-time employees that go over there to help. So, and that was mentioned in the report. So that's that. The next thing that really kind of gave me concern was, if you go to page 4, you're going to see
lab results that were needed. I had made a request to Mr. Gorman to, when I got the, annual report for 2020. There was usually, there's a spot there, you see in the column, there's lab reports, the testing results that were provided to DC. I've had to FOIL request those and I'm awaiting the results to get the lab testing. And I had to do that on page 7, the same thing, the finished compost. If somebody asked a question earlier about the results of the composting, the finished product. But what really gave me huge concern is on page 5. That is, it reflects the process by which there's a heat process that goes through when you're composting. Now, in that, if you look at anything I've seen on the internet, it talks about the optimum levels for doing compost. And that is 100, well, they use it 45 to 60 degrees Celsius or 113 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. What I'm seeing on this report, as you see in that lower section where there's a checkoff, it says 14 days at 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. Is that right, Kevin? Okay, so
Greater than. It just says greater than.
greater. So at the end of the day, that translates to 104 to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the reason I raise concern with that is because it falls below what's considered to be the optimum amount of temperature for doing composting. Now, it may qualify for DEC rules. I'm not saying it doesn't. I don't know what the DEC numbers are. However, it's a fine line on appropriate composting of sewage sludge. And if it falls below that 113, the pathogens are going to survive. Weed, some of the terms they use, weed seed destruction slows decomposition. Because what the threatening part of that is, if it falls below certain temperatures, it goes from a class A to a class B. And if it goes class B, as Kevin, I'm sure you will acknowledge, it goes into many more restrictions as far as what can be done with that compost. So, I mean, I could go on and on about that, but I'm not going to.
My question then is to Kevin, do we ever reach class B or do we always pass it?
We sample the end product. If it does not pass, we put it back through the whole entire process again.
So it's always class A when we're done.
Product is class A.
Okay.
Now, there is one thing I want to add to this, and this is where it gets feared, because I'm going to hope that there's certainly record keeping that's related to all this temp testing. Now, in 2011, Washington County was fined $75,000 by EPA because they weren't keeping proper records of the temperatures they couldn't determine with their investigation that it had been at the correct levels to properly compost the sludge. So that was a grave concern. They didn't give good records. That was obvious, so I trust that's happening.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
That was a whole
thing here, because it costs a lot of money
I got the newspaper article if anybody wants to read it.
Yeah, no, I remember it.
So that was a huge concern there. And that's why these are the things I'm just bringing up as I've gone through this. So moving forward, based on the analysis that I have provided to the October memo provided by Mr. Gorman, by the Washington County Sewer District staff, the annual 2024 composting facility report to DEC. The current lack of guidelines, and it's obvious, in fairness to Mr. Gorman, that's a no man's land as far as EPA hasn't developed any guidelines, and they've kicked the can down the road for not years, but
but over a decade do that very same thing. So it's an uncertain time. So that is a huge concern. So I guess with all that said here, my big concern is it's because we're in a gray area that we should definitely implement the moratorium. It should be enacted by Washington County. The uncertainty surrounding the risk to public health, which was brought up before, animals, soil, air, water are great. Although it's a new, it is now confirmed that compost has already been spread to the farmland and elsewhere in Washington County. A moratorium is required to halt any further risk. If indeed the two PFAS compounds that we've talked about are tested at low levels, that's great. However, it's a good time for us to stop land application. Also, New York State's next legislation session will reconsider that 5-year moratorium they got talked about a minute ago. I do ask as an add-on to what I'm talking about now, if you would develop a resolution, whether it be through this committee, the total board, whatever, it would be great if we did that. I have a copy of the Steuben County that's on your papers that I'm providing. But finally, I'm going to say this. As a result of everything that I have presented today, I would recommend that the Washington County composting facility be indefinitely, be closed indefinitely until the aforementioned issues are resolved. The facility is not cost effective, poses a serious risk as we've talked about here at length. I intend to appear at the December 2nd Public Works Committee meeting to recommend these actions be considered and addressed. And I thank you for listening to me.
So, any other questions?
Well, it's an interesting scenario of what you've come to because we fixed it in 2011. We haven't had any problems since, certainly not since Kevin's been here. The PFOAs, of course, is a more newer situation for most falls. But if we did that, our expenses would be out of this world if you did.
I'd like to comment. I mean, currently because we are splitting the bill with Lake George, we're currently spending around $100,000 to maintain the compost facility. That's through and through. That includes everything. If we were to landfill our amount of wet sludge, we're talking over 200,000 based on like current prices. So you're doubling that cost. But this isn't about money. You know, we do understand PFAS. You know,
not as ridiculous as I would have thought.
Right. I will say, you know, the sewer plant doesn't create PFAS. You know, it comes to us. It comes from industries, as Ron mentioned. You know, so I didn't know where we were when all this stuff first started coming out. That's why I did that set of sampling. I was happy to find out we were actually in pretty good shape as far as PFAS goes. You know, I wasn't required to do that one, but I wanted to get an idea of where we were. But that's certainly not required to do any more. But I don't think that's necessary right now. It's not a Washington County problem. It's a nation problem, nationwide problem. And they are going to come out with some sort of guidelines and hope, you know, us wastewater people hope that they're going to come out with ways to counteract the source rather than attack the biosolids. You know, we got to get rid of it where it's coming from. And I don't know of any places in our district that are contributing PFAS anymore. I mean, it's in shampoos, it's in everything, you know, the normal user is contributing it. I just recommend we would sit back and that may not have been the right term, sit back, but I recommend we wait for the state to come out with, you know, their recommendation. And I don't think we're contaminating anything right now, based on anything I've seen.
That first and then Charles.
Just a couple comments. How many times have people been hurt because they're waiting for government regulation? So I prefer we're proactive in this. at the very least, start testing to get an actual baseline of where we're at. Make sure that that one test is not an anomaly one direction or the other. It could come back as better news than we think, but we don't know until we do something. And it's not just coming into your facility, it's being spread on our land in our county. Where it goes down into the water that we get our water from. You know, most of this county is on wells. And a lot of us are right next to farms. So there's a lot of concerns there that I think we need to be proactive about. Ron, I think your little motion there is probably a little premature. But shoot for the moon and you might get a star. So, it just, I think we need to know more before we can go forward in anything. Thank you.
Charles?
Yes, thank you. Reading the report that Kevin filled out, I believe, and I want to make sure I understand it, the one that you mentioned, check process of over 14 days, there's two greater than 40 degrees, comma, greater than 45 degrees. So that means we're above those levels. Or why are there two of them there? You know, 40 and 45.
That template is pre-filled out by the DEC. That's one of the methods that can achieve the Class A compost. So that's just us telling them what compost procedure we're conducting. You know, it may be much longer than 14 days. It may be, you know, each pile could be different. Depending on how wet it is and how much mixture we're getting.
But this says greater than for the average. So we are above 45 degrees on average, which would satisfy, as I understand this report. But I also, Scott's right, we need to know more. If these are coming from the households, what's more dangerous? People using them in the household, getting it in their bodies from the air, or what finally gets to our wastewater? Why would we be doing wastewater if we're not more involved on what's going on and getting into the house?
Can I answer that? Because that PFAS is in or not everything, it's in a lot of. It's close. It's in Teflon pans, it's in female, cosmetics and stuff. I mean, there's a pharmaceutical waste. There's a multitude of contaminants. And I'm sure Kevin's probably much more adept at identifying those than I, but I can tell you this, it does end up in that system. And here's another one this is a later thing that's cropping up. Even the landfills, somebody mentioned it earlier, the landfill, the leachate that comes out of landfills, they're collecting that once it comes down. Where do you think they send that? They send it to the sewer treatment or the wastewater treatment plants to process it through again. And they're not in a position to deal with these heavily contaminated situations. So then if that lands into your sludge, which it probably will, that's headed off to your compost facility, which, in fairness to you, Kevin, at the end of the day, even you've assured me that the land around there's a wetland there, a federal wetland, I noticed in the thread today. That's not been tested. You've told me there that land or the wetlands has not been tested. There's a lot of testings that need to be done. I agree with you. That's why I want to do this in the first place. And I still do. But you really need to, there's so many places that are trying to deal with PFAS. You want to get excited, look at Maine. It's in the deer and the turkey, and they just closed up a huge composting facility like Casella had because they're contaminants in this pool that they had from the leachate or whatever coming out of it. It's such astronomical amounts. What they choose to do? Closed it up and leave it down. So what they were producing was coming out of Boston, the bigger cities. Granted, we're lucky because we live in a rural county. I'm just saying we are fortunate. If those figures that you're saying are very low, I'm happy to hear it. There's nothing that I expect that you would be disappointed by hearing that.
But it is a dangerous situation, and I certainly want to impress upon everybody here that doing a moratorium is gonna be in Washington County's best interest. We are heavily dependent on agriculture, tourism, all the things these committees are about. And given our limited resources that we have, I'm with you on trying to protect that, preserve this whole process we got going. It's just our livelihood.
I'm gonna take Sam now, because we got 3 more after Sam.
So my concerns is that when Kevin's got it under control, part of the point, I haven't had as much concern there as I am that we can put the requirements on them. But that doesn't stop all the truckers from bringing it from out of state. And that's what really concerns me, because with all of the land that we have being rented and leased now, the farms, and a lot of the owners that own the farm right around here, they bought up the land and leasing it out to be utilized. So year after year, so let's say it goes 5, 10 years down the road, and the guy just collecting their money, the farm owners, not the farm owners, the people leasing the land, don't know the difference, so they're just collecting the monies on it. And then somewhere down the road, all of a sudden, the farm stops to go. You've got those fields that have now been contaminated for 5, 10 years. And that farmland is never gonna be readily regenerated. And it's all not from the stuff that Kevin's doing to protect it and move it, it's from the outside sources going. And in the resolution, it didn't say anything about outside, it was geared towards just just towards the source district itself, it's just itself. And so, I think that what can come in from the outside and 40 of those classes. And I'll tell you a quick story on that. About 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was driving down through 149, and then you go over the road, there's a County Route 47 that comes up and comes into. And so anyways, I smelled this stuff. Smelled like a propane gas, what it smelled like. Couldn't figure it out. And I look up to my side and I see this pile of stuff. It looks to me like the roads that have been ground up and somebody just dumped it there. Saying, why would we put that there? But I didn't realize that's where the smell was coming from. 3 days later, I get a phone call from Supervisor Hogan, who says to me, he says, hey, I just wanted to let you know you got this truckload of stuff coming over that's gonna be distributed in Fort Ann. I said, what are you talking about? Well, they can't leave in Kingsbury because we have a law against it. Yeah, he said, it's foul stuff, it's poisonous stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So then it comes over to when it gets over to Hartford. Well, who intercepts it over in Hartford but Supervisor Half? Okay, yeah, pulls him over to the side of the road. Says, hey, you got a soft tire there, you hadn't go very far. Where you going with that stuff? Well, I was going to the birch farm over in Fort Ann. So finally traced down where it was. Terrible smelling stuff. But by that time, he'd already had it all spread. And so my point being is the stuff that went on, and we have nothing that really controls it. In Fort Ann, we had the Department of Health, we had DEC, we had the manufacturer of the product that was selling it to the farmers come in.
We may come to a meeting.
Yep. And we talked about it. Department of Health says, well, it's probably not the best, but we don't have anything that stops it. DEC, well, we have our stuff, but it's probably, but in the future, they'll be doing something. Now it's 4 years ago, they haven't done anything as we speak, maybe 5 years ago. And that's not the first time I don't believe it was used in the town of Fort Ann, but it's the first time that I normally know about it, because other people have them. So, and it's a mess, and if it has to be cleaned up, it's gonna be kind of like solar panels. With no guarantee we put that on there, if 5, 10 years from now, they're not gonna go out saying, okay, you can no longer use that land, it's loaded with all kinds of stuff that can't regenerate it, as we have with the solar panels. So we're doing something here that we know is a hazard. I think we need to take a look at doing something on this, and it may not be exactly the resolution that Ron has there, but something to protect the land. And, the farmers aren't, this is, not all the farmers use it, some of them know better to use it. They see what's there. But there's a bunch of them out there just fighting for survival right now. And they're gonna use whatever's it can use, and they don't understand the full dangers of it. So, I'm off my soapbox, that's what I'm doing.
Lance, you're next.
Okay, let me climb up on the soapbox. The only thing I want to mention is if we're going to end up doing something internally before state comes forward with any guidance, we need to make sure that we get our arms around someone from the health side, whether through public safety or through Washington County Public Health, but someone who can actually talk towards, once you start bringing up the health concerns, we need someone in-house who can at least validate, make our actions appropriately back.
So Nate was next,
No,
Jay was next.
I'm in agreement with Scott and it's not this committee, but we bring it up in DPW. I think maybe we ought to be testing 6 times a year. It would be $3,000 more to your budget. But every 2 months, we would get a mix of what's in that compost because you're turning it over 40, 45 days in there. So that we have a handle on that. But there's another thing. I'm totally for a resolution not spreading anything coming in from outside this county. 100% behind that. Our problem now is Kevin has just told us this is gonna cost us about 100 to 150,000 if we try to even shut this down and ship stuff out. Who bears that cost? Do we say to Washington County, we just went through 3 months of pure hell here. Oh, we got 150,000 because we're nervous about this and we need to ship it to a landfill? Or do we tell the users and just a few users getting us slammed with that kind of is up? So I'm not sure where we can go with our own compost at this point in time till we have one and more of a handle on
What
our levels are. And two, how do we figure out if we aren't gonna have it operate and spread anymore, how are we gonna pay for this?
And can we legally put the moratorium on for stuff coming in? That would be the bigger thing. I don't know if they don't have an actual guideline. How do we stop that? But we did get them to stop promoting it at least. We got them pulled off on that.
Can I add something?
Did Nate, did you wanna talk? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to go through.
There's a
mine.
few things about this that concern me. One, I know of a farm that was mandated that they had to put in a catch system for silage juice runoff into their fields. That's silage juice, that's for corn. That's pretty organic and they redeemed it. And the second thing is up in Middlebury, there's a big farm right near the college. They have a methane digester. They are not allowed to spread that finished product on the fields up there. They ship it down to Washington County and spread on the fields down here. And it's just a finished product from the methane digester. In the state of New York, whatever they do would not surprise me, but they might come back and say all of a sudden now, you can't be part of 5 parts per billion on their next go around. We don't have any idea which way this is going. And given the current circumstances, anything that they do wouldn't surprise me. And we might be all of a sudden find ourselves way over the threshold. We don't know how this is gonna play out. And like, Kevin was saying, a year and a half ago, you do one test. That doesn't give you any idea where you currently are. Is there an influx of the FOAs in the industry right now? A higher influx into the cosmetics and everything coming in. We just don't have a clue.
The other thing I thought about as we were going through is, the users that are receiving the $20,000 worth of sludge that is free. Is there a contract that's between the sewer district and the landowner to take on all risk and responsibilities? I don't know if that's the case or not.
That's an attorney question. That's what I was saying, as far as who's buying it, we don't really have control of what they're gonna use it for. A lot of it's used in just general landscaping that's not anything to do with agriculture. That might be near wells, that's how this is also the wells.
And also, Kevin, so that's the second question would be, if we don't have any idea, then we're not really mapping as to where it's going.
When we sell it or give it away, we get their intent for it, but really, control past that.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Let me go with Brian first and then I'll.
I was just gonna say, if Nate happened to be right and they lower it to a level lower than what ours is testing at, your transportation costs will be in the millions, not in the hundreds of thousands, because that changes it for the whole state, because now it can't stay in the state. it's
Right.
gonna leave.
Everybody.
Everybody's gonna be paying that. It's gonna be, yeah, it won't be in New York anymore, and we know it won't be going to Maine, because they already got a problem. So where's it going? And that's probably why it was in Maine, because they had nothing in place. It was big money, it's, oh, it won't hurt anybody, it's out where it's desolate, and then they find out. They
Right,
condemn.
I've been in this market for a municipality that didn't have a compost facility, and I believe there's only 2 or 3 landfills in the entire state that are taking biosolids, and they're not looking to take new customers either. There's another
It's gonna,
avenue, like the
that-
price will
it will
skyrocket
skyrocket.
if we can even find them. You know, what do we do if we got nowhere to put it?
This is the other thought. Casper site in Granville is getting prepared, DA County is gonna come in and do remediation of the site. They got 79,000 yards of material that has to be excavated. I met the DEC people and I said, what are you doing with all this? You bring it to Fort Edward, going to burn it? No, their facility isn't hot enough to burn this dirt. Where you going with it? They said, Michigan. I said, Michigan, you're gonna transport this all the way to Michigan? They said, yep. I said, well, they gotta have quite a facility there to burn this dirt. He said, no, it goes in landfill. I said, you're telling me you're spending $27 million taking it out of this hole, trucking all the way over here to drop it in this hole? They said, yep. That's how wide the mindset is on all this pollution, and it just makes no sense. Taking out of a hole in Granville, trucking all the way to Michigan to put it back in another hole. And this is nasty, nasty ground.
Scott, did you have additional?
Yeah, I just wanted to, follow Jay, let's stop the outside stuff coming in. I would bet the paycheck has much higher levels than we have here. And not hamstring our own sewer district. So at least for the, time being, we get more information. Stop the outside stuff from coming in and we, step one, I guess, we're gonna have to.
I guess my question in that respect then is, when you say outside coming to from outside the state, because correct me if I'm wrong, some of your sludge comes from Village Falls and Lake George, which is outside.
I mean, it could be sludge not generated at our compost facility or something. I don't know how you word it, but.
Or outside the region even. Cause I mean, we haven't had any problem with anything yet, like George.
For the record, we also don't take any ditching. We used to in years past, but we don't take that.
Or the only sludge you go to compost in the Fort Edward facility.
Right, so I guess my big question is, what am I doing?
Right.
And the reason I ask is, the last time we were at this committee, the committee, I believe, agreed to have me write up a local law for a moratorium. Then we got the Public Works and that changed. So I've heard a few other things, I've seen a couple other options. What is the board's, or at least the committee's wish, even if that means sending it to Public Works to get their input? What is it that, if anything, you want to do?
So just a thought, okay? By sending it to Public Works, you've got more of the Board of Supervisors involved in the process. And it's not just this committee, but a shared between 2 committees, so that we can come up with a potential resolution that we could really think about and move forward on if it deemed in the Washington County's best interest.
And the one thing I was gonna say, if we wanted to, it'd be an interesting way to word it, that we would take stuff from counties only that have areas inside the Adirondack Park, because they don't allow any manufacturing up there. It would still allow Lake George. It wouldn't change our system at all. I think that could be an interesting way to look at it. Do we know what the commissioners feel on this? That the commissioners, because they're in charge of operations, if they,
Right, and it's our intent to keep operating the compost facility.
no, but I mean, have they discussed this at all, or have you had discussions with the commissioners? Because usually everything that comes here has come through the commissioners first, but,
On the front page.
right?
I mean, I guess, at the very least, I wouldn't have a problem. Board doesn't. Or we figure the other stuff out. Want me to do a resolution like this to Ben supporting the statewide moratorium, that's an easy thing to do.
Right.
You know, anything beyond that, it may require more discussion, but at the very least. You know, if we want to take an action such as that I can do easily between now and that board. If that's the explanation. Service.
Yes.
I think we really need to have more information. We all have the idea we want, we want to be proactive or something. But I think support what Lance said, really need more information from officials like public health, DEC. We need that kind of information and the state officials before I think we take it. Move now. I don't know if there's something you can do to say that we don't want anything coming in that isn't produced by our compost facility. That seems to be a going to interrupt our operations and it would be a step in between. But I don't believe an official stop all activity here should be done until you meet with the state. Lance and I both have had experience in our towns with this, and there's a whole element of information that we've seen in the past that we haven't seen here yet, because we haven't seen anybody from the state get official information.
For
And I
anybody
think
that wants
that's a
to,
good thing.
anybody that wants to do their own research, just Google Forever Chemicals and 3M Company. And you will get some stories that you won't even believe,
You're always gonna get,
because I've read them.
you're always gonna get, everybody's gonna come here and tell us all the bad. We're not gonna hear any of the goods, if that's not designed this conversation. And I think we really need to hear from whoever wants to set up and come up with that. But you need to have state officials. There's tons of information that we saw when PFOA was a big deal. They have not been presented here at all. So I don't think it should be taking major action until that has been done.
Anybody else?
I think that's a bad move. I think if that a moratorium can be drafted that will prevent outside sources coming in with, as they call it, soil enhancer or free fertilizer, whatever label they put on it. And Kevin, I remember our conversation when I interviewed you on November 3rd. You said that if it didn't impact your facility down there and your operations, you'd be okay with a moratorium. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Brock, can you restate?
Cause we spoke, you said that if this moratorium didn't affect your operations. And you're kind of going on all these very low levels that you're talking about. If they don't impact you, you were okay with a moratorium. That's what I remember you saying.
Best district of the district, best interest of the district, so.
So at the end of the day, there is risk, no matter what, whether the low levels or not, as we're talking. But I'll tell you, if you're waiting for EPA or DEC to come up with appropriate levels anytime soon, that's not gonna happen. I think it's incumbent upon everybody here to decide whether or not you can maintain the operation you want to maintain. I'm not a fan of that, but if that's what you can come up with, I think we'll have to settle for that. I think it's wise. Won't have any cost impact on you, but it's gonna prevent, like the birch farm, what Sam was talking about. All these other farms that are out here and have had, been approached by these big cities and trying to get rid of their waste. I mean, fortunately, again, being small is not a bad thing. But I think if we can do that, and that's legally okay, in kind of just banning anything from other sources, you know what we could rely on? I just was thinking of this. DEC has approved your permit for the next 5 years, or however long that 5-year permit is. So you have a identified group that you're okay to deal with. Granville, Whitehall, Lake George. I wasn't too fond of that GlaxoSmithKline, the pharmaceutical company, but you have an identified group that you can say, this is part of what we have and we'll take care of that. But I honestly, Kevin, that spreading it on farmland is not a good move. But if you want to do a moratorium, try it.
So, with this moratorium. A lot of big words in there. There's no penalty. How do you enforce it? What's the cost to enforce it?
It's on there are costs per day cost. When you look at the information I provided before from, down to Thurston, Steuben, or, Schoharie County, I think it's $1,000 a day.
That resolution is supporting state.
The state more
There's $1,000 a day in those counties that I told you there was a moratorium in.
Second thing I want to point out, was that an organization, an operation of sewer district runs their operation. We can say we want to do testing, but they don't have to, that's up to them.
Anyway, well,
No,
Jay's next.
we can direct that.
we can direct.
We can direct that. Yeah, I believe
Jay,
we
you're
direct
next.
that.
Yeah, and at least, I think we should have a moratorium for outside. We should have substantial penalties. I think we should have regular testing, so we know what we're dealing with. And then we'll go from there. I don't want to shut the compost system down, but I'd like to know what we're dealing with, and
If
we can work to something down the road, but we don't need to have the unknown coming in from outside, and you can't believe any good old boy with a big tractor trailer, oh yeah, that's it, all right, we'll just go with it, so.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to move it to the DPW for that exact conversation, because that's what should happen, but I just wish I was there for it, and I won't be,
Okay.
but.
Okay, we got a second with Lance, a second with Jay. And, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron, for bringing this in. It's good, it's all good information. We, no, it's too late when you've heard it after the fact and you have a problem. That's
The main stories.
That's,
Is there, thank you. Is there any other business to come before this form? Okay, everybody's good? Okay, then we stand adjourned. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.